detected because of this brilliant disease-blocking function of the vaccines that we have. All of them are like this. But actually, if you can step away from thinking about the individual level, if you can allocate your vaccines to bring down population prevalence, you can actually do a better job for those vulnerable by reallocating the vaccination sort of upstream, if you like, so before they get infected, just reduce the transmission across the population.
Mathematician Julia Gogg of Cambridge University revisiting the optimum strategy for using vaccines. Someone else called it the rumble in the jungle, and I'll happily borrow the line. As well as their famous trumpeting, elephants generate deep note growls that shake the ground as an alternative channel for communication. And just as seismologists can locate earthquake sources with arrays of seismometers, so zoologist Beth Mortimer and her colleagues reckoned they could put an array of metaphorical ears to the ground to help in their elephant behavioural studies and conservation work.
Their vocal cords are so big, they generate so much force that part of the vibration goes through the air and part of it will go into the ground through their feet. But also the air vibration is so loud that probably a component is also the ground coupling with the air as well.
And you say that the elephants generate these sounds, but also, I mean, if they're detecting these seismic waves, they must be coming up through their feet. I mean, have they got tickly feet that they feel it with?
So we don't actually know for sure, but there are two options. So they have sensors embedded in their skin. They're a special type of vibration sensors, and we know that elephants have a huge number of these sensors on their feet. So they could be detecting it that way. But also, you may have come across bone conduction headphones. Elephants are also thought maybe to detect vibrations through bone conduction. So the vibration going through their feet, through the bones in their legs, and then into their...
Just to be clear, this wasn't what was on 5 minutes ago, right?
What's interesting about your new study is that you want to eavesdrop on the elephants, but to see if you can locate them by using a series of seismometers.
Yeah, so the vision here really is, can we remotely monitor elephant behavior? So the idea was, can you leave these seismometers, they're called, out in the environment to detect elephant rumbles? Can we then hopefully automatically determine if an elephant is there and where it is as well?
Where were you doing this?
Elephant detectors. Wouldn't you love to have one of those?
In Impala Research Centre in northern Kenya. And we chose to put 4 seismometers around a watering hole, and we put acoustic sensors in exactly the same place. And we knew there were going to be lots of elephants going there in order to drink.
So you're sort of comparing the signals at each of those 4 stations, and from that you can triangulate, I guess, effectively where the elephants were.
Yeah, that's right. So it relies on a kind of time of arrival difference. So as you might expect, a seismometer or a sensor that's closer to the elephant would detect the rumble first. You would then have a slight time delay before it reached the second sensor that was further away. And in that way, you can then determine time differences between the different stations, and you can use that then to triangulate where the elephant is.
And how accurate were you?
So for the seismic and the acoustic data set that we collected, we were able to get within.
So can you program the wide area landmines not to blow up on elephants?
A remote monitoring technique.
And how far could you be away? How far do these signals actually go through the ground?
We certainly know that we can detect them in the kilometre range. Whether it's more than that relies on gathering a lot more data. But you will get basically better data if you have the sensor closer to the elephant.
Wow.
So actually having a dense array.
Well, if you knew what elephants were, you wouldn't need the detectors, eh?
Be the best way to be accurately detecting and locating these elephants.
How would you actually use these seismic signals in the next stages?
So I'm particularly interested in kind of comparing this acoustic part of the rumble that's generated at the same time as the seismic component. So the idea would be if you can record these rumbles in a whole variety of different social contexts and environmental contexts, and you can compare the acoustic part of the rumble with the seismic part. Having these sensors out remotely monitoring is absolutely key to that study.
But it sounds like you would imagine that would really help you understand elephant behaviour, but also maybe do conservation work.
Absolutely. So if you can monitor elephants remotely, That is going to be really key for conservation. So potentially with this system, we can detect the elephant and locate the elephant in kind of the seconds timescale. So you can imagine how useful that would be if you can then send a text message or have some kind of signal going to a ranger, say, that can then perform an action as a consequence of that information. So that's really what we're working towards from a conservation perspective, is this ability to have this reactive monitoring approach, not just passive.
Beth Mortimer of the University of Oxford. Her results were published in the interdisciplinary journal Royal Society Interface. I'm Roland Peace. The producer is Alex Mansfield, and we'll interface with you next week with another edition of Science in Action. Meanwhile, do see if you can locate our webpage.
What? Is it like there's a trick to finding your webpage?
You're listening to the All News Channel, powered by KCRW.
Listen to KCRW music around the clock on Eclectic 24. The all-music streaming service features new, classic, and exclusive acts 24 hours a day on demand. Go to kcrw.com/eclectic24 or stream on the KCRW mobile
Welcome to News Hour from the BBC World Service. I'm Julian Marshall. Today, Olympics in a time of COVID. The Games are formally opened in Tokyo in a virtually empty stadium.
They've recorded sound from previous Olympics. They're going to play that through the tunnel.
Really?
We speak to one of the sport's biggest stars, Tony Hawk. President Xi has been on a surprise visit to Tibet, the first by a Chinese leader in more than 30 years. So what message was he sending?
Yes, you can freely practice your religion and your culture as long as it's subordinate to the Chinese Communist Party.
Also, Haiti buries its assassinated president.
Way to interpret it.
And can Madrid beat climate change by surrounding the city with a huge forest?
Drop of water.
That's all coming up after the latest news.
Hello, this is the BBC News with Fiona MacDonald. Emperor Naruhito of Japan has formally opened the Olympic Games at a ceremony in Tokyo.
Emperor, I
the
thought you had a
president
prime
of the
minister.
International Olympic Committee, Thomas Bach, thanked the Japanese people and described today as a moment of hope. From Tokyo, Alex Capstick reports.
The Emperor Naruhito declared the Games open towards the end of a low-key, understated opening ceremony in a largely deserted arena. At times it was so quiet the noise of protesters outside calling for the event to be cancelled could be heard. The mood lifted when athletes from the 206 delegations entered to a soundtrack of video game theme tunes. 1,800 drones lit up the night sky in the shape of planet Earth, hovering above the stadium. It was a highlight. The climax came when the tennis star Naomi Osaka lit the Olympic cauldron. The final act of a show which lacked the grandiose spectacle of previous ceremonies, but one after all the challenges faced by the organisers appeared to set the right tone.
Israeli team members killed by Palestinian gunmen at the 1972 Munich Olympics were remembered during the Tokyo Olympics opening ceremony for the first time in 49 years.
Bye.
Shot milestone today. Earlier in the pandemic, Scarborough was hit hard with 16 of its 17 of its postal codes being designated as COVID-19 hotspots. Global's Brittany Rose.
Since the start of the pandemic, more than 11,000 cases per 100,000 people were reported in Scarborough Village, 9,600 in Thorncliffe Park, and 8,400 in Morningside. With numbers at a record low, Scarborough residents are feeling much safer.
Makes you feel safer, make everyone around you feel safer, family, everyone, you know. I'm glad it's happening.
It's because it was such a hot spot that I'm so happy to see that, more people did not get injured worse by the COVID.
In Toronto, more than 4.1 million doses have been administered, and nearly 60% of residents
So we got the fourth or fifth day in a row of increases.
The Scarborough Health Network has organized a number of vaccine initiatives for the weekend. Tonight, there will be late night dash for doses clinic at the U of T Scarborough campus, which will offer food and live music. The Vax the North clinic is being held at Mel Lastman Square tomorrow and Sunday, and walk-ins will be available. Mayor John Tory says that area of the city has a lower vaccination rate, and he wants to see some higher numbers.
How do you know?
Ontario reported 192 cases of COVID-19 today, the most in more than 2 weeks, but still relatively low. Test positivity slightly.
It's more than twice last year's low. We never met last year's low this year. So how do you know which areas have the lowest vaccination rates? You keep banging on the doors and people say, no, we're not interested, because they're trying to make you go away. Right, so you keep advertising that the vaccines, you don't have to check IDs at these certain places, always in the black neighborhoods. There's a low uptake. I don't know where I'm going with it. I know where I'm going, but you're not crunching the numbers correctly. No, you're not.
Murder. Speaking to mourners, Jovenel Moise's widow, Martine, said she wanted justice and not revenge. It's still not known who ordered the assassination. China is imposing sanctions on several US individuals and organizations.
All the idiots here. You mean the Haitian government wouldn't WhatsApp me anonymously to come?
The former US Commerce Secretary,
you're idiots to even pretend that excuse would have worked.
Washington sanctioned
we're driving away. We got away with it.
Office because of their role in the security crackdown in the territory.
You had to know you wouldn't get away with it. There's just a bunch of dumb niggers we've been holding down for 200 years. No, you haven't been holding. You've been trying to hold them down.
Genocide denial in the Balkan country. Risto Pico has the details.
Genocide is a divisive issue in Bosnia. The International Court of Justice has ruled that the massacre by Serb fighters of Muslim men and boys in Srebrenica in 1995 constitutes just that crime. But today, the hardline Serb member of the presidency alleged genocide had never taken place in Bosnia. Milorad Dodik even said the ban meant that Bosnia could no longer function as a country and threatened to start its dissolution. The UN representative had argued that without banning genocide denial, there can be no peaceful future for the country.
The UN Security Council has
can't deny genocide. You're going to just shut the country down.
To reopen a resort abandoned
That's effective enough for me.
The Turkish invasion in 1974. It demanded an immediate reversal of the plans, warning they would raise tensions and harm the prospects of finding a settlement. BBC News.
What?
Hello and welcome to News Hour from the BBC World Service, coming to you live from our studios in central London. I'm Julian Marshall. Fireworks exploding above the Olympic Stadium in Tokyo earlier today. They were the loudest sounds at a very subdued opening ceremony held in a virtually empty stadium.
So these guys,
before the Jays return to Rogers Center on July 30th, Jays haven't.
So these idiots tried getting into my router, like must have been a dozen times today. It keeps resetting, or it keeps attempting to reprogram. No, reset it all before I even start. And I'm getting people running up on me on this. You talk about I never talk about you. It was you're the fucking goose hacking my system, and you take that personally. In which case, why are you running up on me in the street? I thought it was supposed to make me say that. Look, see, every time he goes live, we attack his videos, so he talks about us. That's the whole purpose of that. Okay? Unless it's not you, in which case, why are you fucking watching all my videos saying they're all about you? They're not about you, dumbass. So this fucking sociopathic fucking pedophile, every fucking video I make, apparently he watches every fucking second of it, and then come running up on me screaming random disparate things that he's heard on the video, and they're all about him. I don't fucking know you, dumbass. And by the way, what I'm doing right now is recalling what happened today. I'm not talking through the screen to somebody. I'm not forcing my way in your house. It's you, dumbass. You are upset. So the person's chasing me, they're screaming out, I'm obsessed with you. I want to rape you. I want to kill you. Nobody wants to fuck you. I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? You just said you want to rape me, but nobody, like, what? You're doing me a favor trying to rape me because nobody wants to fuck me. Okay. This is the type of fucking sex offender around here. Apparently the police want this person to terrorize the neighborhood because breaking into people's houses, stalking kids, harassing people, throwing blood in people's faces, all these things, the jerking off in public and all this shit isn't enough to charge them with anything, not even with hate crime enhancements and shit. 8 minutes into the hour. Wow. Might not have anything useful right now.
8% of the country. So the thing is, do you think they really want a negotiated settlement, or do you think they are more interested in an outright military victory?
Well, I think the situation is very fluid as we speak. I mean, within Afghanistan and around Afghanistan. I mean, since 2005, 16 years ago, we have been hearing the Taliban control, increasing amount of territory, especially in the rural areas. And now they're claiming to control 85%, which may be true. They don't control any big city yet, but they are threatening Kabul, Kandahar, Balkh, and of course, Jalalabad. My feeling is that there is a little bit of change in their strategy this time. Last time, everybody in the 1990s, after the Soviet withdrawal, and then after the Mujahideen, everybody was trying to capture Kabul.
Withdrawal.
Because traditionally, if you hold Kabul, you in a way become the overlord.
Didn't mean to do that.
Or, the ruling oligarchy in the entire country.
In a way,
this time,
sort of, in a way.
The Taliban, over the last 6-7 weeks, have been concentrating on border, points, like with Pakistan, German border post, Bolduc, Spin Bolduc, also with Iran, that is where they started. And then with Tajikistan, which is basically an area traditionally under the control of Northern Alliance. And also, I'm sure,
I thought Northern Alliance had to do with Saskatchewan.
To the northwest. So I think there is a slight change that you see in the Taliban strategy, that they want to choke the Kabul regime, the Afghan regime, by controlling all the border entry and exit points. It does not mean that their pressure on the cities is lessening, but I think this is a new development. And number two, I think the negotiations are going on, and negotiations give Taliban more time to strategize and to get more, soldiers, and to organize their offensive. And with the Americans gone or marginalized, I think Taliban feel that time is on their side. So maybe in the next few weeks, we'll see more claims of having controlled or captured more territory. Now, Afghan regime, I think, is pretty much on the defensive, and the statements which are coming out of Kabul, both from Ashraf Ghani and Amrullah Saleh, they show a kind of defeated, state of mind.
Well, Professor Margadam, how do you look at the Taliban's strategy here? As Professor Malik just said, the traditional heartlands of Taliban.
According to Jiang Kai, Deputy Director of Green Energy and Building Research Center at China Energy, it is the first building integrated photovoltaics center of such a scale in China. And similar innovative projects have been coming out of Future Science City as a result of its continuous efforts to optimize the local business environment. Future Science City was established in the year 2009 and has gradually established a full cycle industrial support covering a whole range of areas, including attracting industrial investment to industrial services. Here's a little bit more info on this newly launched.
Hold on, that's Taliban. Hold on. The
Olympics. I chaired the evaluation commission for the IOC when the
games, as they've now come to embody. Well, there was ballroom dancing, I guess, because it was an observer sport. And
oh, shut up! Jesus.
Points in that direction.
Okay, so Dr. Wang Ying, what do you think is the best case scenario when it comes to a peace deal?
What's the
does a power
scenario?
sharing agreement look possible?
Well, I think at this moment we may our focus or our expectation may should not, or it would be difficult or if not possible to focus on the kind of best case scenario when in terms of a peace deal. Because if there's a best case scenario, I would hope that the Taliban and the Afghan government representatives will be able to continue the intra-Afghan dialogues as they agreed in the Doha agreement. Unfortunately, as we have just discussed, that that negotiation or that talk has been on and off, and certainly it started
good at hiding when you
late.
fucking touch stuff in my house, eh?
The Doha agreement was signed February, end of February last year, and the first meeting, the launching ceremony, it took almost 7 months up to, I think, early September last year. And then there have been contacts, but never been able to agree any concrete or specific things, even about the agenda or the formalities. The latest round of talks, again, it just ended up with nothing except a kind of agreement or a promise to meet again. But of course, the good news or the silver line of that meeting is that the Taliban supreme leader seems that indicates that they would like to commit to this kind of talk, which is significant in the sense that as all of us are worried, are talking about the civil war and things like that. So the best case, if there's a best case scenario, certainly it would be a kind of agreement, power sharing.
Everything's running. See, it's not all busted. Not even trying to fuck with it.
I think the Taliban will be part of that, but it would have to be accepted by all the political forces, and it would be also, I think, agreeable to the regional countries and international community as a whole. So at this moment, it would be difficult to look at a best case scenario, but let us hope that the ongoing and talks between the intra-Afghan talks between the Taliban government is not an attempt to buy time or to make preparation for civil war. Either, I think, by the Taliban, which is now largely believed, or a kind of other political forces in Afghanistan. Remember, I think the Afghan government certainly is the government representing Afghan, but there are other militia, regional, I think, forces. They are also very much agitated at the scenarios or at the uncertainties coming out of the current round of violence.
Well, so Professor Savage, actually the Taliban spokesperson Sahel Shaheen said in a recent interview with the Associated Press that they do not want to monopolize power, but he also insisted that there won't be peace in Afghanistan until there is a new negotiated government in Kabul and President Ashraf Ghani is removed. So if there is to be a power-sharing government, what do you think that could look like? Professor.
Thank you.
Yes,
I think that's an excellent question, and it really depends on what the sort of the win set is for the different players here, right? And looking at what the U.S. Might be happy to live with going forward, it's actually a pretty broad range of outcomes. I think that is being underestimated when we comment on America's position in the war and given the withdrawal. the Biden administration and certainly previously the Trump administration, they would have been happy with a range of outcomes that basically come down to Afghanistan being contained, right? And that means a whole lot of, to me also problematic things, but it refers to the Afghan population, arms flows, spillover of violence, drug trade, and so on and so forth, immigration as well, or migration out of Afghanistan. And obviously, in addition to that, refers to the recruitment, support for, financing, training, harboring any sort of terrorist group that might have some kind of aggressive agenda towards U.S. troops in the region or U.S. territory, right? But so barred all of that, in fact, you could see how the Biden administration would be actually open to quite a lot of different modalities of power sharing, right? We've heard that they're open to some type of Islamic Council, jurisprudence council reviewing legislation, right? They're open to the Constitution being rewritten, and obviously this is not the official, fully official attitude, but we've heard this coming out of the administration. They're open to the Constitution being rewritten and Afghanistan being now declared an Islamic Republic, and Islam being the official religion of the country. And now, to what extent this jurisprudence and law review council, to what extent they would actually command and direct and really affect lawmaking, law enforcement in the country, sort of the implementation of different rights, obviously women's rights, political rights in the country. That's the question, right? But this is the nitty-gritty, right? And so the nitty-gritty of it opens up certain possibilities for a settlement. However, I'm not positive that the Taliban care. I'm not so sure they really care about the nitty-gritty, right? It is clear that they've said we want an Islamic Republic, and we're happy to we're happy to observe some the rights and constitutional limitations on authority, but they've also placed their own parameters around the solution, which is as long as it's aligned with Islamic law and the national interest, and whatever you may interpret that to be. But those are two pretty big caveats, right? And as little as we know about the negotiations, in fact, we actually know a lot about the different sides, red lines, if you will, or the potential for a settlement, right? Including Ashraf Ghani, who should there be a settlement that mainstream
to construct this forest?
No, so we already have significantly large green and forest areas, but these at the moment are scattered sets of green areas. So what we tend to do is to provide this entire connectivity all around the city. We will not demolish houses or other infrastructures, but what we'll do is to use the available non-forested areas, and also to use the new urban developments that are taking place and are being planned to organize the spatial arrangement of the new housing and of the green area land uses, so that all these new developments ensure the availability of green and forest areas within the new urban development, but also the entire continuity of the project throughout the city of Madrid.
And this has become vital, has it, for Madrid? I mean, air quality in the city is really poor now, is it?
Yeah, at many large cities we have problems with climate change, with air quality, and many other issues related to these topics. And indeed, we have a set of responses to these problems, and one of them is this Metropolitan Forest Project, which will also filter pollutants, but also is a climate change adaptation response. So we want to bring nature to the urban environment to mitigate the urban heat island effect, and to ensure that our city is more resilient against climate change, and to compensate for the increase in temperatures that the shade and the microclimate of these new forests will provide directly in the areas where it's planted, but also in the surroundings.
I mean, you say your hope is that this urban forest is going to fight the heat island effect that is happening inside Madrid itself. But it's not going to do much, is it, to halt the desertification, which has now reached the doorstep of southern Europe?
This is one important point, because in Madrid we have, in the southern part of the city, we have already a significant desertification process going on that may be accelerating in those areas where there is not an adequate tree and vegetation coverage that contains these desertification processes. So we want to act now that we are still in time to provide these native vegetation areas with low water requirements, so that this whole system improves the capacity of the land and of the city to cope. And also, this corridor around the city that I was mentioning, it's a green corridor, but it's also a social corridor where we will create playgrounds, trails for walking, running, or for cycling, and for increasing the quality of life, which has also, on the other hand, proven and very important through the pandemic.
So reconnecting the residents of Madrid with nature.
Yeah, that's it. We want nature to go with Madrid, and we want also to have, and with this project, we also aim to provide this balanced distribution of these new areas, so that all the neighborhood can have these services that nature provides to the citizens.
Of Santiago Saura of Madrid City Council. Back to the Tokyo Olympics, and some of those competing will not be representing their home nation. Once again, a team of refugee athletes has been selected for the Games, a move aimed at drawing attention to the plight of those who've been forced to leave their homes. In the Netherlands, Matthew Kenyon has been hearing one refugee athlete's story.
At a gym in the Dutch town of Almere, Sander Aldas is preparing for the greatest moment of her sporting life.
You're happy, you're exciting, you cannot believe it. You're like, it's the Olympics, the dream will come true eventually, so all the emotions come together.
Sander is from Syria and judo is her sport, but she isn't representing her country in Tokyo. Instead, she's part of the refugee team, 29 competitors from around the world in a variety of different sports, who've all had to leave their homes.
We reached a point that we couldn't find the basic things to live from, and because it was hard for my husband to leave the country and we couldn't manage the money to travel all of three of us, then we made the decision that it would be easier for me to leave. Then I left to Turkey, from Turkey through the sea to and then through the sea here to the Netherlands.
Like so many other people, her journey was long and difficult, and when she finally arrived in the Netherlands, she was still without her family. Sander Aldas needed something to keep herself together, and that was her sport.
I couldn't stop sport, so I just had to, when I was in the camp, I had to run outside. There was some fitness equipment in the camp, in each camp. Later, I met some people who become my really friends, who helped me find a place to train.
Look, hungry people are going to chase you.
Someone close to them, so I can continue training. And I kept doing this, like training almost every day.
Eventually, Sander's family found a way to join her in the Netherlands, and they began to make a new life together. Her husband, Fadi Darwish, is also her coach. For him too, it was a very difficult process.
That you've got 100 things to look at instead of 30 or 35. So you would think that that would get a bigger audience, but I think it's fragmented it, and it's becoming irrelevant. I'd be interested in what some of your other. I'm not going to watch. I plan to watch really anything. I'll probably catch some glimpses, but I'm sure a lot of people like me, they're just apathetic for it. Yeah, I'm kind of curious why that is. I mean, is it because
an Afghan, and who was one of the architects of policies, American policies, not only to Afghanistan, but also to Afghanistan, to Iraq and Pakistan. I think these people should have understood that Afghanistan has all kinds of dynamics, all kinds of bottlenecks, all kinds of challenges, and simple military withdrawal after spending so much money, so many years, is not going to resolve the regional problems, internal problems, or the global challenges which may come up, in this power vacuum. So I'm not sounding like a pessimistic analyst, but I do feel that it put more responsibility on Afghans
By the way, these will
to
kill
put
you.
their own house in order. And I think Taliban, I hope they have moderate elements, they take up this challenge. And also the people in Northern Alliance, they are giving all kind of statements. They are antagonizing Pakistan, they are antagonizing Pashtuns. I think that will not be helpful. I think now is the time to talk of reconciliation. And this is where I think the Afghan leaders or warlords, they have to act more responsibly, away from the politics they have followed so far, because they sadly some of them joined the invading forces. And when they saw that invading forces were withdrawing, they changed their alliances. We saw that in 1989. We saw that in 1996 when Taliban came. Many of these warlords joined the Taliban. And when the Americans came, they joined the Americans. And now they are leaving. Americans are leaving, so some of these warlords will join the Taliban. That is why the time is on the side of the Taliban. So my feeling is that in place of vengeance, in place of changing alliances for petty interest, more than anybody else, Afghanistan and people of Afghanistan should take the responsibility, and they shouldn't really blame now whoever invaded the country or their regional neighbors. I think the ball is in their court. That's how I feel. But I think America and the global powers and the regional powers should understand that before they undertake any kind of military intervention, they should look at the results. And also when they are making an exit, they should think about political strategies and what they are leaving behind.
Okay, thank you, Professor Iftikhar Malik, Valentin Moghadam, Dr. Wang Ying, and Dr. Boyan Savage. We'll take a short break here. Coming back, we'll continue our discussion.
To me, there's no real skill in certain things like the rock.
And tells its Buddhists who's boss. The man who protected a Soweto shopping mall from looters. Haiti buries its assassinated president, and skateboarding legend Tony Hawk on his sport joining the Olympics. That's all coming up.
That was a while ago, bro. And that was because of the video game money.
BBC News with Fiona MacDonald. The Olympic Games have been formally opened by Emperor Naruhito of Japan at a pared-down ceremony in Tokyo. The stadium held fewer than 1,000 spectators because of the coronavirus pandemic. The president of the International Olympic Committee, Thomas Bach, thanked the Japanese people and described today as a moment of hope. The Japanese tennis star Naomi Osaka lit the Olympic cauldron. Sierra Leone has become the latest country in Africa to abolish the death penalty. Capital punishment will be replaced with life imprisonment or a minimum term of 30 years.
Ooh.
The funeral of President Jovenel Moïse has taken place in Haiti amid heavy security. He was shot dead by mercenaries at his home 2 weeks ago.
Heavy security.
Speaking
He's already
at the
dead,
funeral, his widow, Martine Moïse, said she wanted justice, not revenge. The Russian authorities have made further moves against independent investigative media, with the Justice Ministry designating the Insider newspaper a so-called foreign agent. The Latvia-based online publication has collaborated with the Bellingcat investigative website on major stories. The Pentagon has confirmed it carried out an airstrike against al-Shabaab militants in Somalia on Friday. The operation in Galmudug was the second targeting the jihadists in a week. They are the first carried out in Somalia by the Biden administration. Bosnian Serbs have criticized the decision by the UN High Representative to ban genocide denial in the Balkan country. The hardline Serb member of the three-person presidency said it meant that Bosnia could no longer function as a country and threatened to start its dissolution. The UN Security Council has condemned plans by Turkish and Turkish Cypriot leaders to reopen a resort abandoned since its residents fled the Turkish invasion in 1974. BBC News.
Welcome back to News Hour. In a moment, we'll hear about President Xi's surprise visit to Tibet. But first, Kenya. has begun using drones to identify mosquito breeding sites in the country and kill them at their larval stage. We're joined now from Nairobi by Rhoda Wadiamba, BBC health reporter. And Rhoda, firstly, give us some sort of sense of the health challenge that malaria poses for Kenya.
So if we look at the economic and social impact that malaria has, it's not prevalent across the country, but there are about 11 cities where malaria is quite prevalent. And most of the people who are prone to die of this disease and also get the infection are expectant women, and this is because of the immune system when they are carrying the baby to term, and children who are below 5 years. So if nothing is done to prevent these women from getting malaria, and also the children who they're giving birth to, then that results to the deaths of more than 10,000 children each year, and that is data from the Kenyan Health Ministry.
So what methods at the moment are used to prevent mosquitoes biting people and infecting them with malaria?
So looking at these areas where malaria is quite prevalent, especially the coastal region and the Lake Basin region in Western Kenya, some of the measures that the government has put in place include sensitizing the community there of the importance of sleeping under treated mosquito bed nets. The government will also have people going around areas where there are mosquito breeding sites to spray these areas to kill the mosquito at the level.
We are stealing your money to borrow, to buy from ourselves, from you to us.
Which is given to children who are below 2 years, again, to prevent them from getting malaria. And now this new technology that was launched yesterday by the president, which is the use of drones to help map out areas and spray these areas so that the mosquitoes, again, will be killed at the larval stage.
That's not, so no, you're using poisons. You have to use WD-40, you fucking retards.
Yes, using drones. It's a new health technology that it's not only Kenya that is doing it. Countries like neighboring Tanzania has been doing it for the past 5 years, and it has been quite successful in killing the mosquitoes very early. Malawi has also done the same, and the beauty about these two countries that Kenya can learn from is that they've been able to reduce the number of deaths and infections that expectant women and children will be reported to have. But if you also look at the flip side of health technology, that it's not only being used in malaria, Rwanda is also using it to supply blood across the country, which of course reduces the time if you're using a vehicle to transport the blood system. But also the biggest impact in this, it will also have a good economic impact, because if we look what promotes malaria transmission, if we look at the poverty levels, and also it blocks economic growth, this will play a huge role in ensuring that the money that has been allocated to malaria programs can be used in other health challenges that are affecting the country.
Rhoda, many thanks for that. That was Rhoda Wadiamba, BBC health reporter, speaking there from the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. You're listening to NewsHour from the BBC. I'm Julian Marshall. Record-breaking rainfall flooded underground railway tunnels in Henan province, China, early this week, leaving passengers trapped in rising waters. Video shared on social media showed evening commuters just managing to keep their heads above water. More than 500 people were eventually rescued from the tunnels, according to officials. Above ground, the situation wasn't much better, with roads turned into rivers, cars and debris swept along in fast-moving currents. Our China correspondent, Robin Brandt, sent us this report from Zhengzhou, the worst-hit city.
After 5 days of incessant rain, the downpour has stopped, in the city at least, but the rescue or recovery hasn't.
This is one of the main streets in the city, but if you come with me, we're going to head up this footbridge to see where the focus of one of the most important rescue efforts is.
At Jingguang Tunnel, they are pumping out vast quantities of water. The 4-lane road flooded 3 days ago. Police officers every 20 meters or so are stationed around the tunnel entrance. One told us, don't film.
The search operation began as rescue, of course, but almost certainly recovery now. There are police, PLA, diggers, and they've been here for 3 days now. It's a desperate wait for people, really. We're hearing stories about mothers looking for their children who were here on scooters on Tuesday, and they haven't heard from them since. The truth is, We just don't know how many cars are in there, how many people are in there. But 3 days since that tunnel was flooded. And now for parents and for other relatives, it's just an unimaginable wait.
Over 30 kilometers away outside the city, there were desperate measures to stop rising river levels. A place called Xinjiang, this man is directing drivers as they line up in green trucks, steer them over the edge of the crumbling riverbank into the water to try to dam the swelling river. Local media reported a 3-month-old baby was rescued from a house here, but its mother had drowned.
Going to stroll up to the entrance to Shakaolu metro station. The shutters are down. Let's have a look inside.
In Zhengzhou, the city worst hit this week, the metro system remains shut, the target of emotional appeals from the families of some still missing after 12 drowned in the tunnels.
The 2 escalators and some steps going down. It looks like the water is still down there at underground level. It's hard to tell there.
I went to Shakaolu station yesterday, the place where some of the dead were pictured on platforms. It was here that families gathered late last night to appeal for more searches for their missing relatives. The metro company insists that the unprecedented rainfall was to blame, not any wrongdoing or negligence on its part.
Our China correspondent Robin Brandt reporting from Henan province in China. Well, President Xi Jinping was out of the country for some of the time that Henan province was being flooded. He made an unannounced visit to the politically sensitive region of Tibet on Wednesday, although the visit wasn't reported by state media until today. He's the first Chinese leader in 30 years to visit Tibet, which China claims to have liberated in 1951. But many exiled Tibetans accuse the Communist Party of religious repression and diluting their culture. Robert Demick is the former Beijing bureau chief of the Los Angeles Times and author of a recent book about Tibet. I asked her why President Xi had chosen this time to go there.
The Chinese press described this as marking
the political will in Afghanistan to reach an agreement where it will help Afghanistan in the end for stability, for security and stability is something I think working on. One thing, lastly, I think last point I guess I would make is that the history of Afghanistan tells us there's no military solution that is something impossible. So as we are talking about the possibility of Taliban's military takeover, we're talking about the other concerns. I guess we need to come to terms or come to agreement some basic minimum at minimum level, and otherwise Afghanistan will continue as we had this in the early 1990s, continue to kind of chaos, continue to becomes a kind of a breeding ground for instability and so forth.
Yes, Professor Savik, I'm wondering how the Afghan people really feel about what is really happening in this country. For example, does the Afghan government have any popular support in the country? And do you feel the foreign military presence has it strengthened or weakened the legitimacy of the Afghan government?
Thank you. A couple of years ago, I did pretty extensive field work in Afghanistan, in Kabul, and in the west of the country, in Herat. And that is to say, it's hard to tell in general. So I'll speak to my experience with the people I've spoken to. To be honest, I think for a lot of ordinary Afghans, the idea of what sort of a more or less mainstream, politically elected, democratically accountable government might mean, the idea is palatable and attractive, especially since it conveys a sense of stability, an opening to some type of economic well-being, welfare development. But when it comes to these actual Afghan governments since 2001, they're obviously a lot more ambivalent, and people support, ordinary people support for, back in the day, Karzai or Ghani, is a lot more tactical, right? Including for the broader coalitions that support these governments, right? Looking at mainstream national parties at the national level, the regional, local politics, it's all a lot more tactical, right? It's about yes, what they can do for the people, but also who are they allied with, right? One of the bigger issues that we haven't touched upon is the extent to which the Afghan government is implicated in political violence, physical violence against their real perceived political opponents. The extent to which the law enforcement apparatus is used to beat up, imprison political opponents, go after them, their families, physically torture them, and so all of these things leave a mark making a negative impression on people across the country. So, I think it's difficult to ask this question in the general, do they enjoy political support? For the most part, no, but there's a lot of hope that among people that they could be different, that an accountable, quasi, somewhat democratic government could work and could exist. I was always, I was inspired by ordinary people's sense of optimism that in spite of all of the sort of the political problems, economic problems in the country, and in particular the extent to which a lot of that comes from the center, from Kabul, from the presidential palace, nonetheless, people are, willing to participate in the political process. I think the better question to ask, is, can we expect ordinary people under, some conditions of relative physical security and safety, can we expect them to vote in the next election, right?
Well, let's say if there's a popular election tomorrow, how do you think the Afghan people are going to decide on their future?
I think it really depends on who is voting where, but insofar as the cities held a lot of sway, sort of the larger cities hold a lot of sway over national politics, and if we ask ourselves how would people in the larger population centers vote, I think ironically the mainstream political parties would still dominate that competition, but then, to the extent to which that reaches outside these larger cities and has any implications for,
maple tree seed.
The more granular rural Afghanistan, that's anyone's guess.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Professor Malik, what would that mean for the Afghan people if the Taliban completely take over the country? And we know that the Taliban have promised to respect human rights, including those of women, within the framework of Islamic norms and Afghan traditions. How would you interpret that?
The ideal situation for Afghanistan will be a government of consensus, which we could call transitional government, which is not dominated by one particular group or the other, and which is not the present Kabul regime, and it's not totally Taliban. That's an ideal. But this is the situation we saw Afghanistan at in 1988, 1989, when the Soviet troops left. There were some people who were demanding establishment of a transitional arrangement, transitional government. It did not take place, sadly, and then we had the years of chaos. And those years of chaos were largely attributed to warlords, to Mujahideen who had been fighting the Soviets, and also partly to Dr. Najibullah, who was the president, planted by Moscow. So if we have similar kind of situation again, and the negotiations between the Kabul regime and the Taliban do not succeed, so we may have a period of chaos with the cities mostly looking for status quo, and the rural and tribal areas, especially the Pashtun heartland, carrying on, with their military onslaught. That's why we need some kind of transitional arrangement. We haven't talked about the United Nations. We haven't talked about EU or other multinational, or multi-state actors. I remember when Taliban came into power, the United Nations turned against the Taliban, which was a huge blunder because Taliban were left on their own and they were pushed towards Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. I remember Afghanistan used to produce 800 million tons
This is the same thing made in
of
Portugal.
poppy, which was used for making opium. So Afghanistan was the biggest poppy grower. But Taliban eliminated that, brought it down to zero, while Americans spent billions of dollars in Colombia and South America, and they could not eliminate poppy growth. But this was done in Afghanistan. But this was not recognized by the Americans. This was not recognized by the United Nations. Bannon 7, who was the UNNY, he hated Taliban. So there was no, they all moved to Pakistan. They were living in these 5-star hotels in Islamabad. The people, the UN people who were dealing with Afghanistan. So they left Afghanistan and they antagonized Taliban. So I hope we learn from those blunders and, we stay involved.
Jesus Christ, man.
Looks president of the Soweto Parliament in South Africa.
Distribution of the BBC NewsHour in the U.S. is supported by Aspiration, a digital banking alternative designed for people who care about the environment. Customers can plant a tree with every swipe of their debit card to offset their carbon footprint. Aspiration.com/green. And Indeed with Instant Match, a hiring tool delivering to businesses a list of candidates whose resumes on Indeed match the job description. Learn more at Indeed.com/credit.
And for their family. And I think that is where Taliban and these stakeholders should make a difference. The history of 1990s should not be repeated. And I also feel that many Afghans feel concerned about Islamic State. And Taliban have not, they have taken a stand against the ISIS, which is again a very positive side. And I think, the well-wishers of Afghanistan should keep that in mind, because if we have chaos, ISIS will get very strong and will get a new stronghold in a chaotic Afghanistan. So what I'm saying is that the United Nations and EU and to a great extent, United States, they owe a great responsibility to this. So I think the Afghans, the ordinary Afghans, want peace, safety, and involvement of the world community in the reconstruction of their country.
Okay, but Professor Moghadam, will the Taliban be able to make a clear break with all those terrorist forces? And as we know, Joe Biden says the U.S. is developing a counterterrorism over-the-horizon capability so it can handle any threat from Al-Qaeda or ISIS from afar. What does that mean?
One can only guess what that means. The U.S. seems, preoccupied with its own interests, and a counter-terrorist strategy can only mean whatever they have in mind. It's very unclear to me. Look, talk has been made of democracy and elections in Afghanistan, and frankly, I don't think that a system of electoral democracy is a panacea. We really have to think seriously about whether democracy can work in a country without economic and social development. There's so much literature on how the two are connected. And anyway, what kind of democracy are we talking about? A minimalist definition, just with a regular election, or a more expansive one with civil, political, and economic rights? I believe that such a model is outside of Afghanistan's reach. And elections, in my view, are not the answer, at least not now. What the country desperately needs is reconstruction and social and economic development which it has not been able to really do. I mean, my ideal scenario would be a formula for a stable system of governance, a kind of transitional technocratic government, hopefully one that could come about, through this kind of regional, agreement that would help the country develop. And yes, of course, multilateral agencies and organizations have to be involved. And they have already been involved to some extent. I mean, there has been some progress, especially in the major cities with schools, hospitals, new media initiatives for women, girls, and youth. The World Bank has been involved in helping to set up, for example, an Afghan Women's Chamber of Commerce. But these have been very difficult to maintain over the past decades, especially since the Taliban resurgence in 2006. And, the Hamid Karzai government was not very effective, and the subsequent government has not been able to achieve the kind of strength, authority, and legitimation that ensures enduring state capacity. And I think that my views are well known that, the Afghan state did have the makings of that capacity in the late 1970s and early 80s. But the support for the Mujahideen by the U.S., Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and I believe China at the time as well, put an end to Afghanistan's capacity to work out its issues for itself, and of course paved the way for, the coming to power of the Taliban. So I'm very much concerned about what happens to women and girls when the Taliban come to power. Yes, there has been some progress in school enrollment, but according to, various sources, UNICEF, government, non-governmental sources, something like between 3.7 and 6 million Afghan children are out of school, and 60% of those children are girls. And in the hardest to reach areas of Afghanistan and in the conflict zones, around 85% of out of school children are girls. The quality of schools and teaching staff is low. And the problem of school under-enrollment, lack of completion, poor facilities, and teacher shortage, that even preceded the coronavirus pandemic, which has hit Afghanistan hard, like so many other countries. So apart from the fact that I seriously doubt that the Taliban would put a great deal of labor and investment in improving the quality of the education sector, I really think that the absolute priority should be reconstruction and financing for social and economic development of the country, and that before any idea of elections and so on, which I don't believe makes sense in a country like Afghanistan, because that important link between development and democracy simply is not there.
Yes, and talking about reconstruction, Dr. Wang Ying, actually the Taliban spokesperson Sahel Shaheen has called China a friend to Afghanistan and saying they are hoping to talk to Beijing about investing in reconstruction work. And he also said Taliban would no longer allow China's Uyghur separatist fighters to enter the country. First of all, why does the Taliban regard China as a friend? And secondly, how is China planning to deal with its relations with the Taliban?
Well, China has been always friendly to all its neighbors, and China, I don't think, has any preference, particular preference for a particular political force in Afghanistan, be it Taliban and others. As the saying goes, China doesn't have the dog in the fight. But China certainly, I think, welcomes the statement that Taliban would take into respect China's security interests in Afghanistan, and that would not allow the international terrorist forces, separatist forces, to engage a kind of to undermine China's interests. And having said that, I think I would like to come back to the discussion about what kind of a political system would serve best to Afghanistan's peace and stability and development. I fully agree with the previous speakers. I think we may not in a position to impose or subscribe a kind of particular system, for Afghanistan. They were the only, Afghan people were able to tell what served is best. So, but Afghan people, despite I think the history, culture, in the end, I think the solution for the problems we're having in Afghanistan, I think development is the key to that. So in this regard, be it the reconstruction effort or the development of Afghanistan, if peace and stability comes, China as a close neighbor is ready to, and have always been ready to help. And as a matter of fact, China has expressed its readiness, has made efforts in terms of connectivities, in terms of helping Afghanistan to achieve, to improve the infrastructure.
Thank you, Dr. Wang Ying. We have to leave it here. We're speaking to Dr. Wang Ying, Professor Valentin Moghadam, Professor Iftikhar Malik, and Dr. Boyan Savage. And that's all we have for this edition of World Today. I'm Jiang. Bye for now.
Hello everyone, this is Zoon Ahmed Khan, journalist from Pakistan, currently based in Tsinghua University. World Today is an excellent initiative to discuss current affairs by including experts from across the globe. I've always enjoyed our thought-provoking discussions and wish the team even more success and impact in the future.
I am Dan Wang, China analyst from the Economist Intelligence Unit. Today is a very fun program. It is a place you hear interesting people.
Advocate. Rights.ca. Ability. Rights.ca.
From KCRW, this is Left, Right, and Center.
Congress is in that busy mode before it goes on vacation. Talks are advancing about the BIF. That's what cool kids are calling the bipartisan infrastructure framework. And also about Democrats' $3.5 trillion social spending package. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi rejected some of the Republican designees to investigate the January 6th riot. And there are some issues that look like they won't get action soon, like voting procedures and police reform. Welcome to Left, Right, and Center, your civilized yet provocative antidote to the self-contained opinion bubbles that dominate political debate. I'm Josh Barrow. Later in the show, we'll look at the continued rise of the Delta variant and responses like LA County's reimposed mask mandate. Is it time to bring back social distancing rules? And what can we do to push vaccine rates up? Plus, we'll talk about billionaires in space.
Time to bring it back. Well, you only take it away from a week ago.
Produce spillover technological gains from memory foam to tang. Is that going to happen here? All that plus the LA Olympics forever is coming up next on Left, Right, and Center. We'll be right back.
Also, to learn about the work on ethnic and religious affairs The Space Administration says the country's Mars rover Zhurong has traveled 585 meters on the surface of the red planet. On Friday, the Mars orbiter marked its first anniversary of working in orbit about 378 million kilometers away from Earth. Both the rover and orbiter are working in normal conditions with their subsystems operating normally. China's Tianwen-1 spacecraft, consisting of the orbiter and the rover, as well as a lander, was launched on July the 23rd, 2020. Chinese authorities say the country would like to participate proactively in tracing the origin of COVID-19 in a global perspective. A Chinese government spokesperson made the remarks in response to a query on attempts by some people in the United States to push the WHO to carry out a second phase origin tracing investigation in China. The spokesperson said the joint
because you're looking in the easiest place to look instead of the most likely place to find, and that's why you keep making deals with child molesters to find the kids they killed, because you search 50 feet from the road 6 times, but you don't search 300 feet from the road once.
Authorities say more than 1.5
when your keys are missing, where do you look? Where they're supposed to be, because it's the easiest place to look.
Across China. The figures were released by the National Health Commission on Friday. China's National Observatory has issued an orange alert for Typhoon Impha. Impha, which means fireworks, is becoming stronger and is expected to make landfall in East China's Zhejiang province from Sunday afternoon to early Monday morning. At 11 a.m. on Friday, the center of Typhoon Impha was located in a coastal area approximately 640 kilometers southeast of Xiangshan in Zhejiang province. It is moving northwestward at about 15 kilometers per hour and gaining strength. South Korea and the United States have reaffirmed the significance of dialogue and engagement with North Korea. South Korean Vice Foreign Minister Choi Jung-kun and visiting U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman said the move will contribute to denuclearization of and peace settlement in the Korean Peninsula.
Two people
During the dialogue,
the two senior diplomats also
exchanged opinions about bilateral, regional, and global issues.
You see the problem with it, right?
Quarantine-free travel from all Australian states and territories to New Zealand is being suspended as the COVID-19 situation there worsens. As from Friday midnight, Australians will no longer be able to enter New Zealand quarantine-free. New Zealand says this will be in place for the next 8 weeks. As the pandemic outbreak in the Australian state of New South Wales continues to surge, state authorities declared on Friday the outbreak a national emergency. Venice and its lagoon environment have avoided placement on UNESCO's list of World Heritage Sites in danger, following Italy's ban on massive cruise ships traveling through the city's historic center. Italian ambassador to UNESCO, Massimo Riccardo, welcomed the decision. China Media Group and Tianjin Municipal Government have signed a strategic cooperation agreement. Friday's signing ceremony also witnessed the inauguration of the CMG Tianjin Bureau. CMG President Shen Haixun suggests the two sides work on areas such as smart technology, history, culture, sport, and big data application. That's the news. I'm China.
Insightful analysis, bold comments, friendly debates. Find all that and more on Roundtable, where passion meets in-depth discussion and covers the hottest topics in China.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Roundtable, coming to you live from Beijing.
For Chinese theatre and be blown away by the joys and sorrow, dreams and passions.
You got the Art of War, bro? I've been waiting 5 fucking years, 6 years for you to rerun Art of War.
Chinese theatre, a journey of a lifetime and an inspiration for the soul.
Hello and welcome to Chinese Theatre. In today's edition, we'll continue with the drama series entitled Let's Get Married. Yang Tao is a 32-year-old lobby manager of a 4-star hotel. The beautiful girl has just gone through a painful breakup and lost confidence in love. Guoran is a 36-year-old man who works as a clerk for divorce registration. The unhappy marriage of his parents also casts a shadow on what he thinks of marriage, and he has developed a perpetual fear of marriage. Introduced by a friend of both of them, Yang Tao and Guoran meet and even fall in love at the first sight. But the path that leads them walking down the aisle is not that smooth. Now stay tuned.
What do you mean? I'm confused. A few days ago, I received a warning letter. It stated that your identity is fake and your background is too. It's a crazy world. I don't know what kind of enemy I may have accidentally made. But I guarantee you, this is a big mistake. It's just a lie. Let me explain it to you. I'm really sure that someone's trying to set me up. Show me this letter. Let me see it. So who wrote this? It doesn't matter. The company has made a decision. We want your resignation letter and for you to get processed out ASAP.
Seriously, Mr. Gang? You serious? Just because of this damn letter? Let me put it this way. Let's forget about my identity or my educational background. You know it pretty well. I've made my contribution to this company. I've been doing my best here, at the very least, am I right? I've been a very hard-working employee. Just because of this, you're gonna fire me? I can't accept it. I want to talk to the board of directors. Set up a meeting for me now.
The board of directors has also received the same letter. I am sure you understand that the board and senior managers hold very high standards and we cannot retain employees that lie and provide false facts. So, I'm actually doing you a favor. Before the board of directors force you to leave, I'm asking you to resign quietly.
False identity. Provide false facts. Now you're getting rid of me like this? And aren't you afraid that I would turn around and go to your competitors and give them what they want? I know quite a few secrets about this company. By then, I'm afraid $1 million won't be enough to cover your loss. Think about that.
Are you attempting to threaten me? After we received this letter, I did a little digging with you. In the last quarter, we had over $1 million in cash suddenly go missing. Tell me, where did it go? This is serious. I can send you straight to jail. Now you take this favor and get out.
You know, Mr.
Get out.
You give this. Call us if you need anything.
Okay,
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.
Hey, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care of this receipt.
Great.
The number's written there on the bottom of it.
Okay.
Hey, Tyler, they did a good job. Look how smoothly this screen moves. It's really firm. You know, for this window screen, you can pull it down on the bottom and you can fasten it really easily. Huh?
Thank you. Really. Now I'm running a little short. I'll pay you back as soon as I have the money.
I think the first thing you need is to get yourself a good paying job. After you get some money coming in, we can talk about this. No worries.
Thank you.
Come here and look at this. At the bottom of the window, see there's a keyhole.
Where is it?
You can lock this window with this key.
Here, take the milk tea.
When you come home, remember to lock the window.
Oh no! Take your shirt off. Take it off.
It's okay.
Just, I'll wash it. If you just take your shirt off right now. But it's really important that we hurry. Just take it off. You can go to the bathroom and take it off. Just you drape a towel over or something.
Don't worry.
I can get the stain out. I just have to fix it right now. Just please. It's not.
Did you have a like?
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just go to the bathroom and change, and you can leave it there, and I'll wash it. Okay. Oh, I'm so clumsy. Pretty, huh?
They are. Where did you buy them?
I didn't buy them. I designed them when I was a little girl, and I made them myself. And those, I made them too.
Whoa. You're really such an artist. You should be a fashion designer. You've got a real talent, you know?
When I was growing up, I really wanted to be a wedding dress designer, but I don't think that's going to happen now. I studied fine art for 7 years.
I studied for 6 years.
Really? Then why didn't you go to an art school or something?
Well, the truth is, when I graduated from high school, I wanted to go to the Department of Photography, the Beijing Film Academy, but my mom didn't agree.
Alien to this culture to try to get grips over it. So often it has a lot to do with, like you guys mentioned, prestige, status, respect. And in Western cultures, actually, it's not like they don't care about means at all. Because I think for anybody, there is this sense of pride. You want to maybe look good. I think that's part of human nature. Although I think who the audience is and how hard you try to look good might vary culture to culture. And also in Western context, there's the talk of saving face too. And it most possibly actually might be incorporated into the English lexicon with Chinese influence about this face thing. But what they might not understand is what gaining face means. Like, so in the West, like, yeah, there's the saving face, like, okay, you want to look good kind of thing. But gaining face is like, what do you do to receive the mianzi? So often it has something to do, for example, like this is probably a little bit old-fashioned when you look at it, at a banquet when people are drinking baijiu, for example. And if you go say, oh, Liu Yan, my superior, like, please drink with me, and, you know, bottoms up, that's what I'm going for, right?
I'm not exactly finding anything incredibly interesting here.
But I think, you know, we've seen that Republicans losing 15% of their party or whatever is an electoral disaster for them, even if the Trump side is going to win in every
It's a forethought to really generate this kind of a thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of unanswered questions around that. American researchers started looking into it in Nevada when they were doing atmospheric testing. When you detonate a nuclear weapon just on the ground, everything that happens is in that sort of explosion site. When you detonate a nuclear weapon up in the atmosphere, there's a lot of fallout. We heard concerns about nuclear winter, but there are also
if you put it in the ground, on the ground,
particles that would come out sort of down from where the explosion had happened. They call it the content scattering effect, and that replicated something equivalent to a solar flare, and electronics stopped working. The USSR was investigating something similar, and they actually did it on Kazakhstan as sort of an exploration. And the literature's sparse, but it exists, about how, yeah, they were able to basically destroy the grid for millions of people in Kazakhstan by testing their own version of an EMP weapon. There are concerns now to what degree various state and non-state nefarious actors are investigating this, and there are some people who are not comfortable with the idea that at any given moment, entities such as China will have the satellites flying right over North America at a really sort of perfect vertical height to launch an EMP attack. It would have to be a nuclear detonation, so they would obviously, those satellites would have to be armed in a clandestine way that intelligence hasn't picked up on. But it's still something that a lot of security officials are concerned about the possibilities for.
So what you're saying is the satellite would be the delivery system then?
Yeah, you would have to get things, high up. There are smaller radio frequency devices that are currently used on warfields to sort of scramble electronics, to destroy electronics. It's not exactly the same physics as an EMP attack, but a generally similar idea, and one can go bigger and bigger and aim to take out grids, which is why a lot of electric companies, and this has been something that's actually been talked about. Donald Trump actually signed an executive order encouraging various different U.S. agencies to pay attention to this issue, because they want to harden the grid so that they can decouple better in the case of a cascading effect. Back in our 2003 blackout, the origin story of it was that there were trees that were not properly trimmed in Ohio, and then that means for 2 or 3 days in Toronto, you don't have electricity at all. We had that blackout, and there were some deaths caused by that. There was a bit of societal panic. We all kind of knew that things would get back online in a day or two, so there wasn't widespread anarchy, but you don't want this to go any longer, because once the days turn into weeks, then you get the anarchy, you get the serious problems, which is why many people, including that executive order, saying you guys are going to want to look at ways to isolate your grid, so that, if there is some sort of attack, whatever it is, in one particular region of a county, a country, a city, you can really isolate it, and that there are those fail-safes in place. They're supposed to be in place to some degree already, but they want to tighten them, they want to harden them.
Right, so there's no, as you say, a cascading effect.
Right.
The overall grid would be, I guess, somewhat susceptible to an attack unless you do put things in their silos, as it were. What would the primary targets be if you really had to do this? I mean, I'm asking you to think in an evil way, but if you needed to create the panic or shut things down so communications are lost and so on and so forth, what do you project as the primary targets?
Well, there were investigations done by U.S. officials. They found, I think it was
7 transformer stations alone were enough, the correct ones, not just any 7, but you could take out 7 transformer stations, and this isn't just for an EMP attack, but just, attacking them or whatever way, and if they went down, you could cause a cascading effect that would take down most of the eastern seaboard for quite some time. Many of these materials, it's not like, someone just has a toolbox and you've got extra parts lying around. I mean, a lot of these things, they're not built. In North America, a lot of these materials come from places like South Korea. You can't just suddenly say, all right, we got a backup transformer station lying around. It's not like, we have an extra CN tower, an extra Sky Dome, in a broom closet somewhere. So it's really, it's really about wondering what are your vulnerabilities. The bad guys ask those questions, so the good guys also have to ask those questions to prevent them.
And so, can you project how long it might take for civilization to recover here? How far we'd be set back, and what would a recovery involve?
Yeah, well, there are U.S. congressional reports that have looked into this and committees that have been convened in the U.S. to study it. I found that there was one gentleman in the entire Canadian government who was tasked with somewhat looking into this, and he's in my book. I had some interviews with him there. I mean, the rebuild can be quite massive if this is a worst-case scenario. The natural solar flare could just envelop us, and we could just, to your point, get a nice light show from Aurora Borealis. It could be that mild, or it could be, the big hurt. It could be worst case scenario, and if you do find all of your electronics basically blown, I mean, how do you rebuild from scratch like that when you typically don't have those parts? Because obviously the manufacturing facilities that you need to refurbish those parts could also be compromised. So you're looking at other parts of the globe and so forth to bring them over in just old-fashioned ways on boat. You get to the East Coast, you get to New York Harbor, you get to St. Lawrence River, whatever it is. Well, how do you get the mainland if you find other electronics that are part of your transportation systems have been compromised and so forth? And you realize, man, this is a black swan event. I mean, John, the possibilities of it happening are quite low, I would think, I would hope, but the potential for it does indeed exist.
Absolutely. People have to consider no internet. TikTok's down. What do we do? I mean, panic mode.
John Tory.
Right. Anthony Fury, it's always fascinating to have you engage here on the Oakley Show. The book is Pulse Attack, the real story behind the secret weapon that can destroy North America. Of course, we know Anthony is a Sun-Post media columnist and national comment editor. We'll talk again soon, Anthony. Thanks so much for your time. Yep, you got it. Well, when he talks about the internet coming down, or at least I mentioned it, for some people, maybe it'd be a blessing in disguise. It's just fraught with all kinds of complexies and pitfalls.
Oh,
and
it's complex. It's too complex.
Who was actually tracked and traced by his use of hookup apps, and he was outed. As a consequence, we're going to talk to a professor of law and computer science at Northeastern University in Boston. They say it's a warning sign. We ought to be very, very concerned about these ominous developments. We'll come back and discuss that matter in moments on the Oakley Show. 20 past right now to the roads out of Check and Chopper traffic. Ari Rabinovich.
Okay, John, we got some problems on the 410. The northbound 410 ramp to the 407 is blocked because...
But we also have all this trillions of dollars in spending. And as Megan said, it's like the Republicans at this point, all they have to oppose, they're not opposing spending anymore. It's just how you're going to do this spending. And but that said, I don't think there's going to be anything on immigration just because it's just so toxic it's such a non-winner as a policy for the Democrats at this point that they're just going to try to stuff in everything else. Again, like the community colleges, like, with, these taxes, which I agree with Megan. I don't think you can try to tax the countries from abroad because those we still assume that we are, one of the biggest economies on earth, but there's other rising economies. China is just going to send its exports elsewhere. Europe is going to send its exports elsewhere. They're not going to go with the United States. So, as usual, I urge caution for the Democrats. Get that win. Instead of swinging, everyone always tries to swing for the fences, but a double is the most underrated hit in baseball. Get that double, Democrats.
Let's take a break. I'll be back with Gustavo Arellano of the LA Times and Megan McArdle of the Washington Post to talk about what's not moving through Congress and about COVID. You're listening to Left, Right, and Center.
You're hearing from our left, right, and center, and we want to hear from you too. Tweet us at LRC KCRW and download the free KCRW app to listen to Left, Right, and Center on demand.
almost 50 now. And even back then, he had this guts to not bow down to the pressure of phase. And there are plenty of people like that, and I would like to say me included. So, like I said, it comes down to what type of person you are. It really depends on your personality, your personal values, your entire worldview, the entire system, everything.
Yeah. Well, I would make one sort of, I would construe that, with the guts you just mentioned, I love that word. It's like gutsy, that you mentioned about the mentor. I don't know the man, obviously, but I wonder if it has to come with kind of strings attached, in the sense that maybe this is a particularly capable person. Like, this bank can't lose this talent. Or maybe, sorry to say, he has really thick guanxi. He has like a foundation that he can rely on. Because for most of us, why do we give in to this stuff? I think it's to survive. I think it's to sort of, sometimes to avoid trouble. So like, why do sometimes people give in to the pressure of, let's say there's this super inhumane project and assignment that your boss gave to you. It's like, how could this happen? But it's handed to you. And then why do you not say what you truly think it is? Maybe you're worried that if you say no, the boss will think less of you, or think that you're not like 100% in and a team player, or maybe this could affect your promotion or whatever. So like, there are a lot of these other things that people are thinking, and then after you do a quick calculation in your mind and you're like, well, what I'm gonna lose by saying no, or saying my true opinion on this, is the loss is far greater than just, at least, I think this is debatable whether this is mianzi, giving face or not, but then basically you just give in to the superior. And what I find to be extremely encouraging is that young people today, gosh, you people seem to sometimes see otherwise, and they're so courageous in speaking their minds and showing that, hey, I'm not a robot. I have my opinion and idea on these things, and I'm not afraid to show it to you in a work environment or otherwise. And when I witness this, gosh, I'm giving the applause, because I feel like I've been tamed by society, by this gaslighted. I don't want to sound like a victim, but I'll not arrive at a conclusion just yet. But interesting question, your observation. So I think, as someone who's been in the workforce for more than 10 years or something like that, you change, and you're not that person anymore. The young people that we see in these reports, who are apparently so free to show their true colors, to some extent, and even in the workplace. Wanzhen, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's very inspiring, because it's very important to say no to the things that you don't really like. But sometimes you have to compromise. This is life, and life won't always go into your way. But when it's challenging your boundaries, or you just touch your bottom line, then probably this is time you need to bounce back and trying to stand up and speak for yourself. And that's probably also the reason why we have seen the rising number of people pleasers in every walks of life. Sometimes we have to care about means, because this is the way that you can survive, or maybe in the future you can thrive in the society. And earlier we have a very there was a very popular term in a society that is social death, and people do care about their reputation and their image in the heart of their peers or in the workplace. Sometimes it's your name card. It goes with you for the entire life. And if you just totally destroy your persona, your image, then probably it will bring an end to a career or a relationship, and then you won't feel happy for sure, and you probably will question yourself, and you don't know how you can just win that reputation back, because no matter where you're from and what is your language and also which is your culture, and people around the world all care about their own reputation.
And maybe for Chinese people, it's like, even if you are just an average person, like you think about the reputation too. But in the Western context, this I'm not 100% sure, but just by what I read on Quora, apparently, sometimes reputation it's seen as maybe somebody already of a high social status, and then there's the reputation thing, but it might be seen differently for different people in different hierarchical positions.
But I think overall, reputation certainly affects everybody. It doesn't matter whether you're from the West or the East, because even in English, we have the saying, "Oh, your reputation precedes you," right?
Yeah.
So that goes to show that everyone is basically the same when it comes to phase, because we all want to be respected. We all want honor.
Yeah. I still have a question for you guys, although we kind of established that this might not have everything to do with age, but with the younger generation, and they grow up in a kind of different environment as the previous people. Do you think this is the fact that they might see Mians in a different light has something to do with urbanization, with people becoming living like atoms now, like as in you move to a new city, people don't know you, and you're just fighting for your livelihood and according to your own idea, and there's none of that, if I say no to this person who's like the friend of my uncle, and that might look bad on me or whatnot.
I still think it has to do with the technology, because they have so much platform to voice their opinion, and social media has made it so easy. That's why they don't care about other people as much.
So you think that the cyber world actually translates to the real world? Maybe?
In a certain sense.
And we do have that survey we'd like to share with you among our listeners. What do they think about Mians? So we'll be back after this break. How are you? What's on your mind? Let's have a heart-to-heart on Roundtable. Ask us anything. We'll help you answer it. Send a voice memo to ezfmroundtable@foxmail.com. We'll play a question on Roundtable, then talk through it on the live show. Take care. We can't wait for heart-to-heart with you.
Looking for passion? How about fiery debate? Want to hear about current events in China from different perspectives? Then tune in to Roundtable.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Roundtable, coming to you live from Beijing.
Roundtable.
Roundtable. Connecting China and the world.
We bring you fun and timely discussions about what's affecting our lives everywhere, every day.
Tune in to Roundtable, where the East meets the West, and understanding is the goal.
Informed opinion and heated debate. Find out what's got China talking, and join us for your roundtable discussion.
You're listening to Roundtable with myself, He Yang, and Liu Yan, Huang Shan are here with me. And if only we could air the stuff we talk about in that 1 minute just went by the commercial break, I think it'll so boost our ratings.
Yeah,
but
I think it will go viral for sure.
Oh yeah? But the show might also be axed. So okay, after weighing the two options, let's just seal it in the box. Whatever happens.
I kind of don't see the purpose to continue in this video, but I don't have anything better to do.
The show is domestic men's apparel fashionable enough, and yeah, that's
It's just you click agree, and that's it. It's what lawyers would call a contract of adhesion. It's take it or leave it. And they can determine all the terms of those agreements. So we don't have any power over what happens with that data, and that is a creature, it's a feature of law. The law allows them, gives them all this power to determine what happens on their platform. We have done such a poor job of protecting the privacy of ordinary consumers, ordinary users online, which give platforms and data brokers the opportunity to just gather masses and masses of information and then turn around and either sell it or manipulate us.
Two quick questions in closing then. You said buy stuff. Now Amazon, they've got this key for business. They say it's a real way to expedite getting packages delivered, don't have to leave them on a stoop and be susceptible to porch pirates. But then these people would gain entry to your home. Is there a colossal caveat that comes with this?
It's another example of Amazon's quest for power. I don't think that there's a caveat here. I think this is the goal of information industry companies. Like if you remember a couple of months ago, Google has come out with this, Google and other companies have come out with this way of linking your home security camera to the other security cameras in the neighborhood, essentially to give you 365, 24/7
USA, number 10 squat nursery
in your community. And some of those cameras are, guess what, inside your home. So the goal of these companies is to create a world of total surveillance where they are the intermediaries. And they're selling it to us as it's safer, it's more efficient. But what they're not telling us is that it gives them all the power to determine essentially what we see in our lives. And at some point, companies are going to have the power to open and unlock our doors, to close our windows, to function our cars.
Have that to come in and deliver your groceries upstairs.
A company, if they wanted to, because a car is basically a large computer chip, can shut down a car in the middle of the street if they negotiate with the police in order to stop a speeding vehicle.
That's a little different because that's usually the owners.
World is already here, and Amazon and Google and the examples that you cite are just other examples.
So we've crossed the Rubicon then. There is no answer in response. Professor, tell me.
Well, I think there's very little that individuals can do. People always ask me, well, what can I do to protect myself? And there are small steps you can take, like using Firefox instead of Google Chrome. There are VPNs, virtual private networks. There are, you can have burner email accounts where you send all of your subscriptions so they don't have to real email. But those are small compared to the vast amounts of data that is just passively taken from us. What we really need, it's almost like, think about it like climate change. We could take small individual steps on our own, like composting and recycling, but really climate change requires multinational, global efforts. Protecting our privacy requires legal intervention. It requires a social effort on the part of everyone and society as a whole to come together to not just say, oh, we're going to click this toggle to give us more privacy. Instead, what we need to do is we need laws that regulate the business model that commodifies our data into trillions of dollars for these companies. And until we do, we're going to live in this world where a private company is getting access to every single camera and microphone that you have in your home.
We'll end on that ominous note. I appreciate very much valued insights here this afternoon. And a word to the wise, Dr. Ari Ezra Wellman, Professor of Law and Computer Science at Northeastern University in Boston. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. Take care.
You too. Have a great weekend. We'll come back, by the way, when he was mentioning, climate science. There's an interesting piece we're going to speak to with our panel after 5:30. Mike Schreiner, the leader of the Green Party of Ontario. Michael Diamond going to join us. But the idea that the climate change crusade has failed was written by Kelly McFarland in the Post today. We'll put that to the Green Party leader, amongst other topics worthy of discussion before the hour is out. The climate is impacting the grape growing season in Napa, California. We'll talk to an owner of a winery there and how they're spraying their grapes with sunscreen, but the smoke they don't know what to do about. All that more in the moments ahead on the Oakley Show. Global News Radio 640
You're
Toronto.
spraying your grapes with sunscreen because of smoke. The smoke is blocking the sun, stupid.
Your cooler's getting deals. Your
You
wallet's
are
getting
stupid.
deals.
So I take back what I said yesterday about apologizing. No, I didn't quite apologize. No,
Rather
I
than
wasn't that retarded.
playing
You guys
video
are
games
retarded.
or checking stock numbers and things of that nature. So for them, if you ask them to spend more time just picking out clothes and thinking about what to wear the next day so that they don't look the same, you might as well kill them. There really are people like that. So I'm not surprised. And also, as we keep saying, culture plays a very important role, and stereotypes are a driving force in a lot of decisions people make. So when it comes to what you wear, that's also the key factor here. And unfortunately, the cultural stereotype is that men don't need to pay attention to what they wear nearly as much as women do.
Have you seen the world, bro?
I'll give you an example.
Uh-oh.
There are a lot of TV shows, and one of the particular scenarios is that if a woman is caught wearing the same stuff from yesterday, and then people will just assume that she has been quite naughty. But if a man is wearing the same suit and tie and nobody winks, so that goes to show that the expectation on men wearing different clothes every day is not a thing. But the expectation on women wearing different things every single day is a thing.
How extremely unfair.
Yeah, it's not fair at all. But
the presumption of what they did last night, I think, was the problem.
And also, I mean, she's just answering to the natural desire of, what she's built and born with, and there's nothing wrong with that. Huangshan, sorry that we sort of left it there. But when we look at the reasons why, these domestic male apparel companies don't seem to be able to turn much of a profit, do you think it has something to do with the way that the business has been conducted, or social practices, or what other reasons could there be?
I think many of the domestic menswear brands, they are choosing the wrong sales channels or the marketing strategies, because they poured money into hiring some endorsements and ambassadors, the celebrities, to endorse their brands, or they're just trying to collaborate with some really popular reality shows in order to attract the youngsters and the young consumers. However, they should spend more money on product design. And honestly, compared with female consumers, if a clothing brand and it can grab the heart of a male customer, honestly, they can give you more profits than a female customer, because men, they are shopping for convenience and functions instead of the styles or the design sometimes. And when you can satisfy a male consumer, it can easily turn him into a loyal customer. But for female customers, we are easily to be tempted by the styles and the latest the fads and other kind of factors that we may just change our preference for a brand. We go for the clothes itself, comparing to the brand. But if a man, he's into one brand, he probably will just go to that brand for the 4 seasons. Whenever he needs a piece of clothes, he will just directly go to that brand. So the stickiness of the customer, of male consumers, actually is higher than the female consumers. And for the younger generation, I have to say the other reason is the streetwear brands. And streetwear brands are all hypes in China, and the many young male consumers, they are spending insane amount of money on purchasing the streetwear apparels from especially in recent years. And if you just want to dig out why what contributes to this trend, probably social media, and also the influence of the popular pop and hip-hop culture developing in the country, and has given the spotlight to streetwear in the country. And also, many people really appreciate that hip-hop or the streetwear clothes, they are less gender-oriented. So this idea or this concept has been well accepted and embraced by the younger generation. And when it compares to these domestic clothing brand for men and who are just whose designs are so traditional and conservative and a little bit probably out of date, definitely you cannot win the hearts of the Gen Zers or even the millennials.
Well, I have to say, stereotypes galore. But in this case, they are almost 100% true. Because when it comes to, especially the gender difference, I think it's truly a thing because men are quite lazy. So when they find a certain apparel brand that they like, that fits their personal taste and their needs and wants, they usually tend to stick with that brand. And when it comes to the female buyers, they may be a little bit more fickle and they tend to pick and choose every single time, even if
your gayness is coming through the sound of your voice. You know that's not true. They're going to keep going back to the same. You know they're going to keep going back.
I think this particular example,
that would be HLA Mall.
Yeah, it works on me because I bought suits and also 便装 casual wear from them quite a few times, and I enjoyed what I bought, so I stuck with them.
Right.
And unfortunately, the thing is that they don't really think about like putting more money into design or coming up with new things, new exciting choices all that much. And here's the number. They only spent less than 90 million yuan on R&D, and that's less than 0.5% of the entire profit of 海澜之家. And that's certainly not a single case, because as far as research and development is concerned, from the numbers we have here, all those male apparel firms or companies spent less than 2% of the entire budget they have on research and development. So that's how much attention they pay when it comes to new things and new choices for customers. When that is the case, you're not surprised.
Yeah, I find this to be just unbelievable, unfathomable. I don't understand that those in this business can't see through this. If you're in fashion or apparel or clothing a business, then design is key. That's possibly the most important thing here, because like if it doesn't look good, and of course like with really good execution of tailoring and also high quality of fabric, that's also other factors which are important. But if it doesn't look good, if it doesn't grab the attention of the shoppers, then you have no future in this sense. But I guess some of these companies feel like they can rest on their laurels because they have loyal customers who are obviously not happy with what he's getting in recent seasons, but he's a repeated customer. Would you go again, actually?
Yeah. Like I said,
we need to find you more places to shop.
Yeah, like I said, a lot of people are just lazy. When they find something that works for them, they tend to stick with them.
Okay.
As simple as that. It's not that they, enjoy that all that much, or they're jumping up and down about it. No,
right.
It's not that.
Just out of curiosity and also comedic effect. So I'm not going to repeat the name of the brand, but they're known for maybe 10 years ago or so.
The commercial.
Yes. So a male star with the surname Yin, and he appeared in the commercial and also the still adverts, and like he was clothed in that brand, obviously, and he was like doing these dance moves or whatnot. He looked as if he was really enjoying wearing the clothes. And it, even till today, that advert itself sort of left a mark in our minds. And he didn't look particularly fashionable, but the guy was... that
it imposes. It's actually less risky than the flu. And now the flu obviously is a real public health problem.
one that requires policy responses.
With
and one that
no
probably
flu
requires
season
more
last
responses
year,
than
we
what
figured out how to
provided.
deal with the flu.
But it's
Stupid.
just one of many risks out there that we mitigate as part of everyday life. You have traffic deaths, you have deaths related to alcohol use, and those are
are
things
all
that, again,
called
we wanna
accidents
fight and
in
we
your
wanna
world.
reduce, but we don't have a policy that expects those numbers to get down to zero, and we don't let them get in the way of normal operation of our society. I'm particularly concerned. I think mostly policymakers actually align with me on this. I don't think there has been a lot of rush in jurisdictions to move back to the old rules, but I'm concerned that you're going to see more school districts than you would have had based on the numbers a month ago, continuing to have heavily modified operation in the fall where you don't have students in the classroom learning in person 5 days a week. And that, I think, is going to end up being really costly. So that's the thing I'm most afraid of in terms of this bringing back those restrictions, and part of why I'm so resistant to that.
Really quick, I don't think it's going to go again. These politicians, even the ones in LA County, they understand we can't go back to where we were. But at the same time, at least in LA County and also the red areas in the United States, we are going through a huge spike. Get the question: how much does it cost for you to just wear a mask just until the spike goes down? If it was going down, I'd say, yeah, maybe you don't need a mask. And of course, just indoors. Dodger Stadium yesterday was packed with 50,000 people. Almost no one was wearing a mask. That's fine. Outdoors, it's negligible.
How is it fine?
Megan?
Look, I think that the evidence that even government lockdowns actually did a ton is smaller than you would think. And I think the same is also true for masks. During the pandemic, I was all for having them on, in part because we didn't have anything better until the vaccine came along. But at this point, we are looking. The
mask is 100% stupid. Staying the fuck away from me means you don't catch my virus. And I ain't talking about COVID, dumbass.
I'm
vaccinated, not against what I got.
Case spike, but what they're not seeing is the
You're
same
not vaccinated against what I got.
hospitalization spike, and that is a good sign. And I think what if you're looking at a lot of deaths, it becomes useful to do something that is at least somewhat costly, but and may only have a marginal benefit. But that marginal benefit is big when you're talking about a lot of deaths.
Then it's not
when the
marginal,
number of potential
you
deaths or
fucking
hospitalizations
retard.
is small, the
1% survival rate, 1% death rate. It's
2.8. That's how
2.8.
we should be thinking about these problems. Not to mention the fact
These same
that
people
I
think
there is a
1% is
fatigue
one
and
out
that
of like
it's
everybody is
going to
just
make it harder
one.
to get people to do other things that may become necessary. I think the real risk still outstanding is that Delta evolves into something that is not merely more contagious, but also more virulent and better at evading our vaccine or prior
It doesn't
infection
evade
acquired
your vaccine,
immunity.
dumbass, because it
And
isn't
when these
alive. It
boosters
doesn't
we may
even
need to
consider
at
your
some
vaccine.
point,
Your vaccine
temporarily
does not
until we can get booster shots
elicit
out.
a
That process
response
will be
because
very
viruses
fast
are not
thanks
alive.
to the mRNA platforms. We may need at some point in the next few years to go back while we find a booster solution. And if we're going to do that, we need to preserve that capacity by not just going back every time there's a new variant that isn't killing people at the same level that the original
preserve
COVID was
capacity by not going. But wow,
Before we
you
go,
are
I want to talk
stupid.
about billionaires in space. Both Jeff Bezos
No, the
and Richard
issue
Branson
here
have
is
now
that
gone
she's
to
heard
space, or at
every
least
other
on the edge
woman
of
sell
space
out.
through their
She's heard
respective
every other
privately
politician
funded
her whole
space
life
ventures.
sell out.
Elon Musk, of course, is also in the space business, although he hasn't gone up himself yet. We appear to be in the billionaire-driven phase of space exploration. But once
When
even in
wasn't
space, I mean, the
it,
whole thing about
moron?
space is that it is empty. What's the purpose of sending people there? Is this human
that's
travel
not
just
what
a hobby?
Well, all those space is empty, you know, what's the purpose, you know. The fuck are you talking about? Do you know what the defense industry is? Billionaires, trillionaires, you fucking retard. Jesus, you people are stupid. Oh, I'm on public radio. Yeah, I can tell.
You're listening to the John Oakley Show.
No, I'm not. He's been saying dumb shit for a long time, too. Trippz. What the fuck is that?
When he became a Grand Slam champion.
I had the same reaction last time.
Stage like that always left people with great impressions. So I think after that particular U.S. Open, I think a lot of people who never heard of Li Ning before, especially people from the West, started to pay attention to Li Ning. So, of course, they had good products, but the thing is, they also paid attention to the overseas market, and that's why these two things came together, and they did well for themselves. So I think it's important to look outward as well.
Yeah, from a female's perspective, I still think design is so crucial. And another very successful example is Bosidou. And I remember 1 year, and the brand debuted in the New York Fashion Runway and was one of my favorites, Oscar-winning actress, wore the latest season of Bosidou's down jacket coat. And it grabbed the headlines and grabbed a limelight on that year's report of the collection's release. And so what we can learn from that is that we can just try to improve the design, but at the same time, you cannot sacrifice the quality of your fabric or your materials, because these are the cores and to secure your customers. And if some brands, they can just offer a very good fusion of the traditional and the contemporary Chinese elements, you can definitely win the heart of the younger generation.
Very interesting. And it's funny that you mentioned Bosidou, their down jackets, because actually I bought one of those down jackets for my dad, and he doesn't want to be avant-garde in fashion at all. He's like, I want to stay with the conservative, safe options, okay? I'm like, all right, Dad, whatever you need, I'm here to serve because I love you. And we managed to find him one of those down jackets with really puffy and thick and high density of what do you call that? The down in the jacket, and he's really happy. It's either goose down or it's not. That brand, it has flagship stores elsewhere that's got like hip stuff that the younger generation would be into, but my dad, for him, his age, that would just be kind of a turn off, because he would not be able to relate or see himself wearing like flashy down jackets, that kind of thing. But I think for the brand to have, considering how big it is in China and have these like different offers for different groups of people, of consumers, then sounds kind of smart in that sense. You're listening to Roundtable. Coming up next, a new study found that the majority of romantic couples start out as friends. Stay tuned to find out more.
Complete strangers. Yeah, it kind of makes sense.
Looking for fashion? How about fiery debate?
Well, we didn't even put us halfway.
Current events in China from different perspectives? Then tune in to Roundtable, where East meets West. Understanding is the goal.
It's the hour of Roundtable. Myself, He Yang, and I've got Huang Shan and Liu Yan in the studio with me. Now let's talk about how to move from like to love. A new survey and research found that roughly 2/3 of couples start out as friends and maintain a platonic relationship for long periods before sparking a romance. And this comes from
that's so strange. I
Canada.
thought people just instantly met and were married.
Would you guys agree with that?
This is fucking stupid sometimes.
Well, I don't believe there's a pure friendship between men and women. So I think when you decided to jump into a relationship, it must be because of that you are interested in this person. You have the plan of elevate this friendship to the next level. But if you just regard this person as a friend, I think this relationship would just end up with being just friends.
I totally got this when Harry Met Sally vibe, because the gist of that particular film is men and women just cannot be pure friends. There's no such thing. But I don't know for sure if I entirely agree with that. I think to a large extent that is the case. But I do think there is a possibility, although a slight chance, that men and women can be attracted to each other purely because they find the other person's ideas or thoughts or tastes and things like that fascinating.
I can't really make up my mind on this, but I think maybe I'm somewhere in the middle in looking at this. Maybe it is that when a man and a woman meet, like immediately she's putting him into boxes. Friend zone for sure, friend zone possibly, and oh wow, can I get to know you a bit more, please? So, but you know, as I've sort of, you know, put down here, like at least 3 categories, and 2 categories are kind of the friend zone. So, there's a possibility, but I don't know you guys, but maybe some people sort of have already made their minds up, at least in sort of pigeonholing people in a way, when they see what's the possibility of this, you know, going somewhere.
Halfway full. What the fuck?
Or maybe friends can be the long-lasting thing. Yeah, well, this is actually a research that's conducted by Anthony Stinson, an associate professor in the Department of Psychology in the University of Victoria, Canada. And according to the study,
Victoria, BC, British Columbia. Canada is not a province, and neither is Victoria.
That is the far more preferred
city,
way, as opposed
state,
to meeting somebody
always.
in a bar or online.
You understand that for your country, but not ours.
Is really, you know.
You all understand it for your countries, but not ours.
But personally, I really doubt this particular survey because, according to it, it says 68% reported that their current or most recent boyfriend or girlfriend actually started as a friend, and for at least a year and a half, they didn't do anything.
You like knew each other first. That's so strange.
Do you believe that?
Maybe they're just hanging out, getting to know each other a little yet. That's it for today's roundtable. We'll see you next time.
Jesus, this was fucking horrible.
The best military commander is not he who fights 100 battles and wins every one of them. The best military strategy does not lead to the desiccation of the enemy's capital city. Decoding the Art of War will help you understand why there's no art in war and how Sun Tzu stayed undefeatable using the science of war with fun stories and insightful breakdown of famous battles. Tune in to Decoding the Art of War on Spotify.
No, I want you to read it on the air, the actual fucking Art of War. I don't want decoding the Art of War.
The key to mastering the language. Check out Takeaway Chinese, where you can start learning the language quickly and enjoyably, no matter if you're a rookie or a sophisticated Chinese learner.
我来北京5年了，我是本地人。
There is definitely something that will interest you. Check out Takeaway Chinese. A world starts with 你好.
You're listening to China Plus Radio, connecting you with China and the world.
Now the news, I'm Xiang Yi. After an extra year of waiting, the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games finally...
An extra year of waiting? No, it was 1 year of waiting. It was scheduled for last year. You did it this year. That's a year of waiting. It's not an extra year of waiting.
Planned due to the postponement caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. China has dispatched a 777-member delegation to Tokyo, its largest ever participation in an overseas games. The 431 Chinese athletes, including 24 Olympic champions, will compete in 30 out of 33 sports in Tokyo. Chinese President Xi Jinping has made an inspection tour of Lhasa, capital city of Tibet Autonomous Region. President Xi visited the Drepung Monastery, Barkor Street, and the Potala Palace Square in Lhasa to learn about the work on ethnic and religious affairs, the conservation of the ancient city, as well as the inheritance and protection of Tibetan culture. He also spoke with local residents.
Inheritance.
China's National Space Administration says the country's Mars rover Zhurong has traveled 585 meters on the surface of the red planet. On Friday, the Mars orbiter marked its first anniversary working in orbit about 378 million kilometers away from Earth. Both the rover and orbiter are working in normal conditions with the subsystems operating normally. China's Tianwen-1 spacecraft, consisting of the orbiter and the rover, as well as a lander, was launched on July the 23rd, 2020. Chinese authorities say the country would like to participate proactively in tracing the origin of COVID-19 in a global perspective. A Chinese government spokesperson made the remarks in response to a query on attempts by some people in the United States to push the WHO to carry out a second phase origin tracing.
Remembering that the United States doesn't pay their UN dues.
The spokesperson said the joint WHO-China study on COVID-19 origin tracing published in March has reached a clear conclusion and scientific suggestion, based on which the future origin tracing work should be carried out in multiple countries and regions.
What are you doing?
Authorities say more than 1.5 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccines have been administered across China. The figures were released by the National Health Commission on Friday. China's National Observatory has issued an orange alert for Typhoon Impha. Impha, which means fireworks, is becoming stronger and is expected to make landfall in East China's Zhejiang province from Sunday afternoon to early Monday morning. At 11 a.m. on Friday, the center of Typhoon Impha was located in a coastal area approximately 640 kilometers southeast of Xiangshan in Zhejiang province. It is moving northwestward at about 15 kilometers per hour and gaining strength. South Korea and the United States have reaffirmed the significance of dialogue and engagement with North Korea. South Korean Vice Foreign Minister Choi Jung-hoon and visiting U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman said the move will contribute to denuclearization of and peace settlement in the Korean Peninsula.
It's going in a circle around my leg and ending up on the other side of my shoe.
Diplomats also exchanged opinions about bilateral, regional, and global issues. Quarantine-free travel from all Australian states and territories to New Zealand is being suspended as the COVID-19 situation there worsens.
I didn't know you were still doing that.
Friday midnight, Australians
after you've been having this outbreak lately. That don't make no sense.
New Zealand says this will be in place for the next 8 weeks. As the pandemic outbreak in the Australian state of New South Wales continues to surge, state authorities declared on Friday the outbreak a national emergency. Venice and its lagoon environment have avoided placement on UNESCO's list of World Heritage Sites in danger, following Italy's ban on massive cruise ships traveling through the city's historic center. Italian ambassador to UNESCO, Massimo Riccardo, welcomed the decision. China Media Group and Tianjin Municipal Government have signed a strategic cooperation agreement. Friday's signing ceremony also witnessed the inauguration of the CMG Tianjin Bureau. CMG President Shen Haishun suggests the two sides work on areas such as smart technology, history, culture, sport, and big data application. That's the news. I'm China.
Experience the musical classics of the East.
Damn it.
Mingle with the masters of Chinese music.
Yeah, see the round table again.
General and early Ku Klux Klan leader has been wheeled away from its former place of honor inside the Tennessee State Capitol building. Ever since the piece commemorating Nathan Bedford Forrest was installed 43 years ago, there have been protests. The Black Legislative Caucus said it was painful to have to walk by that bust every day.
It's so painful. This is why you're constantly trying to act like if I would just repeat the slurs people say, if I would just say the names of the people accusing me of things, if I would tell you how hard it is for all you white people that took my land that I'm standing on. They killed me off while I'm standing here.
And the Annie E. Casey Foundation.
You would have changed nothing. You would have done the exact same racist shit. I find it interesting. We still haven't got a fucking notice from this eviction hearing. Because when you hear the audio record, they were all racist to me. And to the security guard. Racist? I mean, the security guard's black like the other security guard, so it's like the same thing as the same guy, so how is it racist? And what's that got to do with me talking about somebody else being racist to me? Nothing, right? Why did you let the guy call me a nigger during the hearing and you didn't stop him? I got called a nigger during that hearing. It's so painful. No, it's ridiculous to watch people that are such a waste of oxygen try to. This is our culture of hatred. No, it's not. You literally just copy it and think it up as you go. There's no culture there. So I'm supposed to go, oh, that culture offends me. So no, it's not a culture. It's just a bunch of idiots doing the same thing sometimes. And then fighting with each other. How many of your Ku Klux Klan leaders have, what was it, 16% sub-Saharan African blood or whatever? You know what sub-Saharan means? Nigger Africa, because the north part is considered white somehow. You know, when they feel like calling them white. When they feel like calling them Muslims, that's non-white. Kind of like you're white until you claim Judaism, then all of a sudden, oh, that's non-white. Right, except the religion chose you, so I'm slightly confused by your reasoning there. I'm just slightly confused. I don't turn white by claiming to be a Christian, do I? Do I? I don't turn into a Christian just because you keep screaming at me that I'm white, do I? Right, so that is a piece of quartzite, quartz, or whatever you call it, I think. Yeah, I can sort of sense it. People are ridiculous, man. People are fucking ridiculous. So there's no news anywhere, apparently. And we caught that dead time of the, what is this? Of the 24-hour cycle. It's 5 a.m. in China. It is 10 p.m. in the UK. It is, it doesn't matter what it is anywhere else, does it? Wow, we're still not full here. Whoa, whoa. Apparently I threw these in the bottom for drainage. Another earwig. Where do these earwigs come from, man? Like, seriously.
Involuntary manslaughter because a firefighter died fighting this thing. But you can see if it comes around that these are caused by humans. Now, I get that the train spark.
Natives are so human.
BC,
Black people are really
came through
people.
And, I guess on the rails, spark ignited because it caught like the dry brush and away they went, burned the town. You can't necessarily blame it as a man-made thing, but others, you know, irresponsibly camping.
Right, because the Koreans aren't human.
Or something like
Railways are not.
That's a cautionary tale and a caveat because you might be charged.
Caveat.
Any firefighter were to pass in
It's a caveat.
regard. You know, there's also a caveat being issued for
Dude,
the
can
American
you pronounce the
swim
word
team
correctly if you're going to pretend you know Latin?
Supposedly going to be a triple threat
Caveat.
in various disciplines in swimming. He's refused to be vaccinated. And the U.S. swim team even has its own concerns, but the people in the lanes beside him may actually be nervous about competing against him. And it starts on Saturday.
They're vaccinated.
But he
They
said
can't get the disease because they're vaccinated.
He vaccinated originally. He said because I don't
Right?
want to put anything
That's
in
your
my
argument.
body that I don't know how long
That water
actually
has
react
more
to.
chlorine in it than a
And
bottle
so
of
in
bleach with the
training,
grocery store
because,
brand
you know,
on it.
sometimes people were felled for a number of days, even for a week, with the
Felled?
lingering effects of getting vaccinated.
Felled
And
for
he
a
said
number of
this
days.
during a pre-Olympics video.
Because felled is temporary.
Conference. As an
Felled
athlete
means
on the elite
dead,
level, everything you do is very calculated and understood. For me, the training cycle, especially leading up to the Olympic trials, I didn't want to risk any days out. There were periods where you take a vaccine and you have to deal with some days off. He didn't want that. But now
There were
he's explained it
periods
further,
where
and whether or not this is
you
actually
hear
a
the
valid
way you
explanation.
speak, bro. The way
He
you
said, look, I
form
survived
sentences is
COVID last year, and I've got the antibodies. I don't need the vaccine.
Exactly.
That's not really playing well with some of his critics, including
Really,
former
because the
US swimming
WHO,
medalist,
the
Maya
British Public
Dorado,
Health, Canadian Public
who
Health,
said that
they all
Michael
said the
would
same
make a
thing.
decision
If you
that puts
beat it
even a bit of
naturally,
risk
that
on his
is the best
teammates
of
where his
you.
own perceived well-being frustrates me. I wish he'd think harder about what he's proud to represent. He talked about being an American, and he's representing his country in multiple ways. And that includes the freedoms we have to make a decision like that. But you see, the fact that he's been vaccinated, and I've got to ask because I'm curious, before we get into our panel at the bottom of the hour, we talked yesterday about vaccine certificates and how these certificates would somehow allow you to access places that the unvaccinated would not. But for some people,
Really?
and now the
That doesn't even make
hesitancy has
sense.
started to see plateaus in some regions. And while we've got over 80% already with a single dose and about 62% with a double dose.
No, you don't.
Even higher in this province.
It was 40%. No, it's not.
Double dosing is about
It was 20%
65,
yesterday or
66%.
last week.
If you've had the COVID already, you contracted the virus and you've survived, you shook it off. Maybe you went through hell, but you're now you're considered to be somewhat immune because you've got the antibodies.
Somewhat
Should that not grant you a vaccine exemption? This is maybe where some of the hesitancy
You see how we
and
flip back and forth on
plateauing
that?
is coming about as a result. People who've had it going, what the hell? I've come through it. Why do I need to get vaccinated
In
now?
Europe, you
Would you
don't.
still get vaccinated if you even survived COVID? Would that give you a pause to say, I don't want to get it again?
You don't
Let me
get it
vaccinated.
again, dumbass.
But I'm just saying,
you get a
vaccine
variant, which is
exemptions,
different,
if you've
which your
already had COVID,
vaccine
does
is
that make
not
sense? Otherwise,
predicated against.
we may be at a standoff here. And you've even got people who are questioning the
Woke
efficacy
up.
of the vaccines. If, for example,
White people against
there were a number of
natives.
Democrats who fled Texas in a private plane. They were unmasked, and they were apparently getting out of Dodge because they didn't want to sit in the legislature and get defeated on a piece of legislation. So without a quorum, meaning they couldn't pass this law.
Without a quorum.
Which doesn't matter what the law is right now, but the Republicans who dominate the legislature down there would have carried the day. So they got out of there, and there was no quorum. But here's the kicker. They were saying that they were all vaccinated when critics were pointing out, look, you're not wearing masks, you're not social distancing. They said, don't worry about it, we're vaccinated. Well, 6 of them contracted COVID. So if they were fully vaccinated, makes you wonder what's the efficacy of the vaccine to begin with.
Oh, you're
And if
flip-flopping
you've got
again.
the antibodies, perhaps you've already been shielded
For
from
6 months,
contracting
you've been
COVID.
going on about
If that's
vaccine,
the case,
vaccine.
maybe
You
that
got to get vaccine, so
reason
I
to
don't
say,
have to wear a mask.
It precludes you from having to get the vaccine. And if this is something that is not really factored into the equation now with vaccine certificates or passports, you've got to show documentation that you were vaccinated. You may have as valid a reason to say I'm immune as anyone who has been vaccinated.
Well, because the people that are vaccinated are not
Does that
immune.
make
They've
sense?
never dealt with the
Would you
actual
agree a
virus. They never
vaccine
had to fight it off
exemption
ever.
if you've already had COVID? Should you have, I don't know, carry a card that says I had COVID?
I don't.
Therefore,
no.
don't
You've
bust my
known
nose.
for a year
Doesn't
that
mean
in
you're
Europe
vaccinated.
it's either vaccine
Yes, no, 870
or
6400. I
antibodies.
wanted
They
to
do an
find out if you
antibody
agree.
test.
It seems like this might be a reasonable or a plausible explanation for exclusion from the vaccinated crowd. Now, I know all of the media initiatives
No,
and
you don't.
from the leaders
No,
and
you
the
don't.
medical community is
No, you
get
don't.
vaccinated, get the double dose. But maybe some people feel I
No,
don't
that's
need to.
you, dumbass.
I don't have to explain.
The
myself
whole
because I've
media is
already
saying
had
it. I know, because I'm saying
Let me
it.
start with Dave in Collingwood on the Oakley Show. Get your thoughts on this one. Hello, Dave. Good afternoon.
Hey, John. Thanks for taking my
About
call.
2-3 inches.
Look, I think this is a real important topic here. I mean, why in the world would anybody get the flu shot after they've recovered from the flu? That would make no sense. But even more so,
You all
would it
do
be
it every
dangerous?
fucking year.
I had COVID last March. It was a really
The vaccine
bad
is
cold
dreamed
in
up
my
2
chest
years
for
ahead of
5
time.
days, you know?
It's not
It wasn't
possible
as
for you to get the
difficult as
vaccine
flu.
before you
But,
get
you know,
the flu.
it was bad
If you had the flu in the last
I
2
saw a
years, you
doctor on
already
the
missed it
internet
from the flu
talking
shot.
about-
You already
he
missed the
specializes in
protective.
vaccines, and talking about that people who have recovered from COVID getting the vaccine could set up what's called a cytostorm in their immune system and could very well kill them or seriously injure them.
What?
So, you know, the medical community, I thought, is first do no harm. Why in the world would I run that risk for nothing?
Because we're all telling you you have to.
Understanding from our government.
For me, because you're making me scared that I'll get sick because you don't take the medicine.
Because we got to keep in mind, this is an experimental vaccine.
Oh, yeah.
Well, hang on. Let me back up because your doctor told
Let
you this.
you
Your
back
doctor
up.
said you could set off an immune cycle that could be risky.
Not my doctor. There's a, you know what, and I don't have his name. You'll find him on the internet somewhere. And it made big news that on the internet, and he invents vaccines. He designs vaccines. And he said that this could cause a cytostorm that has not been tested against people who have already got immunity.
Well, this is what I'm asking now. If you've already, and again, I'm no doctor, but I'm I'm hoping there'd be clarification from the medical establishment, because I'm thinking there's some group of people, whatever the percentage may be, that may be leading to this 20% now hesitancy. Maybe that bracket is filled with people who have already contracted COVID and don't feel the necessity for a vaccine, thinking they've got the antibodies.
Necessity, John. Why would I run the risk? Why? It makes zero sense. It could bloody well kill me.
All right, well, that's what you're saying.
Oh, well, that's what you say.
Well, right,
well, that's what you say.
That's what
you say. You sound like a pedophile trying to argue his way out of being accused of being
on the internet. I've got to take that sort of.
That's what you said.
But Dave, thanks for weighing in. I got a lot of calls on this. Anthony in Toronto's up next here on the Oakley Show. Good afternoon, Anthony.
Mr. Oakley, thank you for taking the call. Great day, for talk radio.
Thank you.
Sure. My daughter's from the internet, not put down at the bottom.
Stop turning it off and call fucking 911, stupid!
On TV. My doctor told me as follows. I had COVID. Fever, red rash, buttonbull cramp is what gave it away. That's not associated with a fever and or flu. You had COVID. I took an antibody test. You're 44, you're young, you're fit, you're healthy. You don't need to take a vaccine. You have antibodies. The only problem, John, is that you talk to my doctor, you talk to Bill Gosh, you talk to this, they all give a different answer on how long these antibodies last. This is the issue. Does it last for a year, John? 10 years? Lifetime? Reinfection rate is possible, but it's very low.
No, it's not. It's a different variant. It lasts 6 months. They already covered this last year.
Why do I need to take a vaccine if I survived it? I beat it, and I'm good to go. Why? What is the...
Well, yeah, I'm losing you here, Anthony, but this is my question, essentially. Should you then have a vaccine exemption?
I can't figure out why I can't hear you when I press the censor
suggested that vaccine certificates or passports are called for. Where's that going to leave you? You're going to refuse the vaccine. Should you be compelled to take the vaccine even though you defeated COVID? I'd like more clarification on this.
Remember, the vaccine is something you're supposed to
next
ask
time you have your
for,
doctors
not
on,
have it pushed on you.
Asking them that, because we can't get it straight ahead. Because if that's the case, I had COVID, doctor. I beat it. Why can't I have a vaccine passport? Can you explain what? I'd love to put that question to your doctor panel.
There is no vaccine passport, so you're not asking your doctor that.
Yeah, you don't want a vaccine passport. You want a vaccine exemption. You want it noted, whatever the paperwork or the QR code might imply, that you
No, it's not an exemption. The only place that has vaccine passports is Europe. They don't just go by, did you get a vaccine? They test you for the antibody response. You fucking retard.
Get a vaccine exemption.
I'm going to lie all day to the whole city.
We'll come back in a moment. We'll take more calls. Off the board on this one, obviously, there are a lot of people who are going through this scenario as we speak. 870-6400 and weigh in. 870-6400. From out of town, 888-225-TALK. Get you on the Oakley Show. 19 past to the roads we go on a check of chopper traffic. Ari Rabinovich.
The Johnny's 4-1 problems at Dixon have been cleared away. That stalled vehicle's been towed out of the right lane. South 427 problems at the ramp to the Gardner have been cleared. But now we got problems on the westbound QEW past the 427. A stalled car in the right lane happens to be a Lambo, so I don't know what kind of tow truck that means, but unfortunately delays from the South 427 to the westbound QEW.
You already know.
Quite the visual distraction, as you can imagine. And then on the west QEW, a third line problems here have been cleared out of the HOV where we had an earlier crash. Own a home in Toronto, switch your mortgage to CIBC and get up to $3,000 cash back. Conditions apply. I'm Ari Rabinovich, Global News Radio, 640 Toronto, Chopper Traffic.
Real Canadian Superstore. From waffles to falafels. It's everything you super need at a price you'll super love in one super easy place.
At Guildhall Wealth Management, we pride ourselves on being the leading, most recognized gold and silver bullion dealer in the country. As our listeners know, we have loved bringing understanding to this field for many years on The Real Money Show. Our clients trust our expertise in the importance of gold and silver ownership, not a paper claim. Real, physical ownership for safety and security. Find out more by listening every Saturday at 1 p.m. and Sunday mornings at 10, or call 1-877-8-SILVER. GuildhallWealth.com.
Volvo's legendary safety, Scandinavian craftsmanship, and intuitive technology, all designed for a driving experience like no other. all designed for you to discover. From July 22nd to 26th, join us for an event like no other, where you can save $2,000 on the Volvo XC60 or S60. Don't miss your chance to experience how luxurious the road can be during Volvo's Discover Days. Conditions apply. Visit your local GTA Volvo retailer or volvocars.ca.
I'm Tracy Tong from Global News. A young girl's dog being attacked by a coyote on a street in Scarborough is shocking enough. But wait till you see what Global News cameras caught during their interview. Watch tonight on Global News at 5:30 and 6.
Everyone to the yoga mat, please. I'm Matt, professional dream coach. Let's start with dream pose. Eyes closed, deep breath. Visualize winning Friday's Lotto Max jackpot of an estimated $10 million. Luxury car pose. You're stopped at a light. That starts somewhere, let's say in northern Iraq, in Erbil. Then they fly to Baghdad. Then from there they fly to Minsk. They spend several days in Minsk, and then they are taken on a minivan, on a bus, to a border with Lithuania, and then they actually are shown the way through the border where it's easiest to cross. Obviously, nobody's saying that it's an illegal trip. And people are paying enormous money for that, somewhere from 1,500 up to 20,000 euros. They would like to go to Germany, to Sweden, to Austria. But since, as any member of a European country, we are obliged to keep people in as a first accepting country.
You've just mentioned a key part of the context here for Americans following along. Your country, Lithuania, is in the European Union. Belarus is not.
Yes, exactly.
You said you believe these people are being used as weapons.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, because the goal of the Belarusian government is not to help people of Iraq. It's actually to change a policy of a European country that was outspoken about the abuses that were happening in Belarus. And they don't like it. And therefore, they know, which buttons they can press. And obviously, one of the most sensitive subjects in any European country or even Western country is the problem of migration.
I don't want to lose sight of the fact that these are people at stake, human beings whose lives are on the line here. For the migrants coming to your country, for those already in your country, you're housing them. What happens to them? Will they have an opportunity to apply for asylum?
They are applying, but unfortunately, I don't think that this is working the way they expected, since it's very difficult for them to prove that they are actually people seeking a political asylum.
Have any received asylum in your country?
Not a single one. And there might be some cases, I know that they are under review, but this is not what they've probably been expecting.
While I've got you, I want to ask about someone who fled to your country under very different circumstances. Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, the leader of the pro-democracy movement there in Belarus. She has been living in exile in your country. What kind of support is your government providing either to her personally or to the broader pro-democracy movement next door?
On a practical terms, I have to say that Lithuania has issued more than 2,000 visas for political refugees from Belarus and Russia. I think that alone is a strong message to the regimes next door that Lithuania is serious about defense of democracy and liberty in the region, well, to say the least. We are using our, the political influence that we have so that we can gather support for the democratic movement, so that we can build on pressure up until the point where these countries can expect actual democratic elections.
This idiot didn't put out the fire.
He is the foreign minister of Lithuania, and he joined us from Vilnius. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, today brought the long-delayed opening ceremony of the Olympic Games in Tokyo. Dazzling affair, but without the big in-person audience. NPR's Layla Fadel was among the few hundred inside the stadium. Hey, Layla. Hey, Elsa. Okay, so this all sounds a little bit depressing to me.
Okay, so fuck off.
The hospital, okay? When you get the swab test, it's to see if you have the influenza. That's why you get your 14 days. In the 14 days, you have to see if the coronavirus mutates to it. Okay?
Okay.
So when I was there, I had two specialists, infection specialists saying, and I asked them, do I need a vaccine once I'm out of here? And they go, not really. You don't need it because your antibodies are even better than the vaccine. I said, well, what if my work asked me to get vaccinated? And they said, well, you can always get a letter to your doctor saying
that you had, corona, and there's no need for you to get vaccinated, right? And then you hear the government saying, well, people should be getting vaccinated no matter what.
So where do you stand? Did you get ballots? Did you get a letter from your doctor to that effect?
No, I didn't, John, because my work has not even asked me for that. They know I got COVID, and I actually, it took me a month and a half to recover, to be honest.
Right, but here's the thing, Alex. It may not be your work that's going to be the problem here. The sticking point may be you want to get into the ball game. You want to get into a concert or something like that, where they demand some kind of vaccine certificate. You don't have one.
Yes, it's true.
Nobody has a vaccine
certificate. And do all these things, but
nobody has
why go through all the hustle just because I want something materialistically? And I go, I need to go get poked when I don't need to. Now I'm going to put myself in.
No, I'm not telling you to get poked. No, I'm just saying you need validation.
I know. All I'm saying, John, is that someone like me, I wouldn't go get vaccinated just to go out and prove them what they want. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, but I'm just saying, let's just take you out of the equation and say, in a general term, should you get an exemption, should you have some record of an exemption because you've got the antibodies, as you say, rather than everybody being pressed to get vaccinated? I don't know that we're going to get to, the 90 percentile that they're saying is the herd immunity threshold, because there are a lot of people who are, as you are, survivors of COVID, and you've got the antibodies.
Yeah, and I think that's so wrong. I mean, to be pushing people for something like that, I mean, what's the point getting 2 pokes and you're still going to be walking afraid saying, oh, someone who hasn't got vaccinated is going to get me sick?
There's that too. All right, but what you're saying is you're not getting vaccinated because your doctor told you your antibodies are as good as immunity as you're going to get from any vaccine. Alex, I read you. Thanks a lot for weighing in. I got to move. I got Derek waiting in line next here on the Oakley Show. Let's get up to Derek. Hi there.
Good afternoon, John. How you doing?
Good, and you?
Good. So I've been listening religiously over the past year and a half to the likes of Mike Stafford and Greg Brady and Kelly Frere, whatever else, and they've covered it extensively through all the different medical professionals and doctors they've had on. That you get the COVID vaccine and the subsequent boosters for the same reason as somebody who's vulnerable or somebody trying to protect somebody who's vulnerable would get the flu shot every year. Is that it's not so much it's a COVID-19, it's more like COVID-21 because it's a different variant that's surfaced this year. It's different variants that have different blueprints. They have different.
A year ago. Oh, it came out this year. No, it didn't. December 2020, I was saying I have something variant.
Required to be able to make the antibodies that they've had from last year or this year. It's the same reason.
All right, well, let me ask you.
No, it's not. That's not how it works. He's a geneticist now.
Booster shot, or do I have, so what you're saying is my shot is effectively obsolete.
Same as mine. That's why they're talking about getting booster shots every year.
Uh-huh.
For the same reason as flu vaccines.
Well, how about then somebody who's survived COVID from the variant, the Delta variant COVID?
Hey, I survived the flu last year. Did you? It doesn't mean I'm going to survive the flu for this year.
Well, no, what you're saying is every time.
Yes, it does, you retard! Oh my God!
You gotta go and get another shot.
Probably.
There is no flu shot.
You want to stand by that?
Dumbest example in the
world. I do.
Okay. Well,
it's been, and I know this is all empirical evidence, but this has been said by the very doctors that you have on your station.
Well, that's all well and good. So, the logic behind that is every time there's a permutation, a new variant comes along, you got to get another shot. And so we continue. It might just be 3 or 4 shots a year is what you're saying.
Well, maybe not 3 or 4 shots a year. Depends on which variant has come to which country. But it's a booster shot. We have them in society already.
No, I understand.
Technology, John.
No, I know, because a flu shot every year, it sort of is tweaked to meet whatever it is that comes out on the annual flu season. You're saying the same thing is going to work with COVID. I'm just saying right now, a lot of people are being... the vaccines that are being applied right now, are they really covering the variants that adequately? And how far, before they're obsolete? That's the question. A lot of people...
I can't be a doctor on that for you, John. I'm just saying what I've understood to be true, just like everybody else, buddy.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Derek. I've got Anthony. He's been waiting a while. Thanks, Anthony, for weighing in here on the Oakley Show.
Hi, listen, I have a scenario in my household where someone very close to me has had a stroke that after 2.5 months of testing and retesting and more tests, finally the neurologist determined that at 42 years of age, someone close to me with no history of any trouble had a stroke, and it was likely caused.
Neurologists don't have anything to do with strokes.
I'm not going to mention the name of the vaccine.
You're an idiot.
So that being said,
the neurologist decided it was a
anyone
stroke.
Who hasn't been vaccinated to be crazy. Friends of mine who are not vaccinated, I am alarmed at it. If I'm required to go get a booster shot, I will go get it, or encouraged to get a booster shot, I will go get it. I think there's other issues out there in terms of people's civil liberties.
He's been practicing his bootlicking.
If
I'm required to do it, I'll do it. I mean, if I'm asked to.
In the aggregate, medicine's been good to me in my lifetime.
Oh, shut up.
I think it's the right thing
then
to
you're
do.
a white person, obviously.
We need to be
you get things from black people's bodies that we aren't even allowed to buy.
Vaccinated, and on top of this, there's a real risk. It's not negligible out there, and that's a worthwhile discussion to have and investigate.
All right, but just so I'm clear, so somebody in your household had a stroke, which the doctors ascribed to the vaccine.
Yes, that is correct.
All right, but you're still a proponent of everyone, yourself included, getting vaccinated.
I would do it. I'd take booster shots. On the aggregate, healthcare system's been good to me over the years. What can I tell you? I'm paranoid of getting sick, maybe. I'm not sure people should be forced to be vaccinated. And I think it's worthwhile to have these conversations about.
You're sort of, we'll see how it turns out, then I'll decide.
People who discuss the risks as maniacs, because it's not necessarily accurate.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. You know what? I mean, I made my own choice, and for my family as well, everybody, you know, we've got the double vaccination. I'm not sitting in judgment. I'm just wondering if there's a point at which, and this was the American swimmer that sort of inspired the question of whether or not people who have had COVID and survived believe they have the antibodies, the necessary ones, notwithstanding that there are variants that are mutating all the time. But does it give you
your antibodies are to do with the spike protein, which don't change.
Certificate that comes out. Do we need to
you are retarded?
Say you survived the.
I'm going to pretend I didn't hear this thing for the last 2 years about immunity. Pretend that somehow vaccines are newer or better and older than immunity.
Do we have a fixed date or time, or is it on the anniversary of or thereabouts that you would get the booster shot? How would this work practically speaking then?
Not only do I think they should have an exemption, I think we all need to learn how to deal with people
is something that's
who are not vaccinated and not treat them like they're maniacs, and respect their civil liberties and their decision not to get vaccinated.
Remember, we went from 20% to 40% to 60% supposedly, or more, in the last 3 days have been vaccinated here.
Forced to take stuff, even in particular, because I've seen it in my own household that there is a risk.
Well, that's why I was kind of curious. You know, it seems like I didn't know which way you were leaning.
That's why
it's an interesting dichotomy. But thanks, Anthony.
That's not a dichotomy, stupid. It's not a dichotomy at all.
That's the question. A vaccine exemption.
A dichotomy means they're opposed. That's not a dichotomy.
I don't know. Or maybe
if you've already got antibodies, there's no point getting the vaccine. It won't give you better antibodies. It's not possible. You got the latest version of the virus and a year-old version of the vaccine.
We'll come back in a moment.
And that's why
the discussion awaits today. Michael Carmen from Upstream Strategy.
Dumbest motherfucker
today. The Green Party of Ontario, weighing in on the Oakley Show. Global News Radio 640 Toronto.
Dumb. You're stupid, bro. You are fucking retarded.
Before he ran the CIA, Bill Burns helped run the State Department, served 5 presidents over more than 3 decades as a diplomat, and you see signs of it all over his new office at the top of CIA headquarters. On the wall, above his computer monitors, for example, 3 framed pictures of Spaso House, Burns's official residence in Moscow during the years he was U.S. ambassador to Russia. So Bill Burns has history in Russia, history tangling with Vladimir Putin, as you're about about to hear. And that's where we begin this final part of my conversation this week with Burns. I asked him, any sign that the pace of cyber attacks emanating from Russia is slowing?
I mean, we'll see, is the honest answer, as the president has said, because the attacks have taken two forms. I mean, one is sort of state-sponsored attacks like we saw in SolarWinds, and then the other are ransomware attacks as well. And, you know, the president...
Say since Geneva and the summit with President Putin, any sign that...
Well, there was certainly one incident that, you know, a group called RE-Evil was responsible for. We'll see what comes after that. I mean, the president, both in Geneva and then in a subsequent telephone conversation with President Putin, made very clear the priority that he attaches to this and the reality that, you know, we will take action if the Russian government doesn't take action against groups operating in its territory. You know, in my experience in dealing with Vladimir Putin over the years, and most of my gray hair came from you know, my service in Russia.
Vladimir Putin.
Russia. He's not shy about controlling things that, you know, happen on or from his territory as well. So this is a test of seriousness on this issue as well.
I keep hearing from you, from President Biden, from other senior members of the administration, we will take action if Russia doesn't. Is there a timeline on that? This has been happening for years. I understand Biden hasn't been president for years, but how long before?
No, I don't.
He hasn't been president for years. You have to point that out because he was vice president before, so that's actually like 5 years in service.
The president has indicated that period is finite when he's talked about, you know, we'll see over the course of the next 6 or 12 months. And so we'll see.
China. In the CIA's current estimation, what is the probability that the virus that causes COVID-19 escaped from a lab in Wuhan?
Well, as you know, Mary Louise, this is something the president has asked the Director of National Intelligence, and CIA is playing a very active role in this process to try to come up with our best judgment on that issue.
But those guys don't know anything about medicine.
We cannot offer a definitive conclusion about whether, you know, this originated in a lab accident or whether it originated in a natural transmission from infected animals to human beings. We are working very hard on this. It's not an academic problem. I mean, as we think ahead, not just to the United States, but in other parts of the world, about how do you prevent another pandemic crisis of this magnitude? In order to do that, it's extremely important to get to the bottom of this. And the Chinese government has not been transparent, has not fully cooperated in the WHO's investigation initially, and it's more recently suggested it's going to refuse to cooperate in a follow-up as well, and that is deeply unfortunate. We will continue to do everything we can to collect on this, work with the rest of the intelligence community, and provide the best answers we can on this. But
is it possible it's unknowable, though?
It is possible, like so many things, that we may never be able to come to a definitive judgment, but it's not going to be for lack of hard work or effort.
Does the CIA have enough case officers who speak Mandarin?
Mandarin.
Increase the number.
Mandarin. Wow, you are fucking rich. You are playing so much ignorance. There was like 3 different things I didn't speak on.
7, both directions. First off, West QEW past the 427. That's
China didn't say they wouldn't cooperate with finding out. They welcomed the WHO with open arms. The WHO tried to bring in people that were infected with COVID-19. Oh, they wouldn't let in the people with COVID-19 unless they quarantine. So that's the same as saying they're not going to cooperate. They already did. I don't think people understand how this shit works, man. And they're hedging what they're saying. They're trying to say it definitely came from a lab, but it's sort of maybe it was an accidental release. In the last 6 months here, you ever heard them say anything about it being an accidental release from a Wuhan virus lab? No, you didn't hear them say anything like that. Now he's hedging what he's saying. This guy's pathetic, man. Pathetic.
Fruits, 水果，苹果, yeah, 果. And 农 is short for 农民. 农民 would be farmer.
Okay.
So you see this abbreviation of putting 水果农民 together and form
2 words from,
a new word, 果农, fruit farmer.
果农, okay.
Fruit farmer.
And Wang Dian, this is online shop, right?
Online shop.
All right. And Li is in, and then Maida, that's like, buy, right?
Yeah, I bought it from
a fruit farmer's online shop.
Got it.
送货到家.
送货到家. So 送货, this means deliver, right? Deliver to, and then 到 is arrive, right? And then 家 is home.
Yes. So actually, if you know all 4 characters, you would have guessed the meaning right. So 送, send or deliver. 货, goods.
If you knew all 4 characters, you wouldn't be guessing, would you?
家, home. But actually, 送货到家 is now a let's say set phrase. It's very commonly seen if you see 送货到家, it's home delivery service.
Okay.
送货到家, 送货到家. 特别新鲜.
特别 is especially or
Especially,
very, right?
very.
And then 新鲜, this is fresh.
Fresh. 新 is new. 鲜 is actually fresh. But putting together, 新鲜 is a word. 新鲜, fresh.
Okay. Yeah, it's really interesting. You have 送, right? Because 送 could mean send or deliver. And then you have 买, which means sell and buy.
You have 买 for buy and 卖 for sell.
Oh, no.
2 different words, 2 different characters, 2 different pronounce. Well, actually 2 different names.
Very, very similar pronunciation.
Very, very similar though, yes. So, 果农网店里买的，送货到家特别新鲜，太好了 ！See you see 太 again， 太好了，推荐给我吧。
So this is amazing or terrific. Would you recommend it to me? Okay, so yeah, 太好了. This is or like 很. Can we say 很好了?
You don't say 很好了, you say 很好.
Oh, 很好. Right. So this is just amazing or terrific. 推荐. This is a new one. This is recommend, right?
Recommend. 推荐 recommend.
Okay, and then 给我 is give me, and then 吧 is like a suggestion for someone to do something, or you're telling someone to do something, right?
Yes, and 给我 of course is give me, but 推荐给我 actually is recommended to me.
Or give me a recommendation.
Give me a recommendation. People sometimes also say 发我吧. Send.
And unfortunately, the thing is that they don't really think about like putting more money into design or coming up with new things, new exciting choices all that much. And here's the number. They only spent less than 90 million yuan on R&D, and that's less than 0.5% of the entire profit of 海蓝之家. And that's certainly not a single case, because as far as research and development is concerned, from the numbers we have here, all those male apparel firms or companies spent less than 2% of the entire budget they have.
I'm not really upset, like I keep flipping out.
Development. So that's how much attention they pay when it comes to new things and new choices for customers. When that is the case, you're not surprised.
Yeah, I find this to be just unbelievable, unfathomable. I don't understand that those in this business can't see through this. If you're in fashion or apparel or clothing a business, then design is key. That's possibly the most important thing here, because like if it doesn't look good, and of course like with really good execution of tailoring and also high quality of fabric, that's also other factors which are important. But if it doesn't look good, if it doesn't grab the attention of the shoppers, then you have no future in this sense. But I guess some of these companies feel like they can rest on their laurels because they have loyal customers who are obviously not happy with what he's getting in recent seasons, but he's a repeated customer. Would you go again, actually?
Yes, I would. Like I said,
we need to find you more places to shop.
Yeah, like I said, a lot of people are just lazy. When they find something that works for them, they tend to stick with them.
Okay.
As simple as that. It's not that they, enjoy that all that much, or they're jumping up and down about it.
Right.
No, it's not that.
Just out of curiosity and also comedic effect. So I'm not going to repeat the name of the brand, but they're known for maybe 10 years ago or so.
The commercial.
Yes. So a male star with the surname Yin
and he appeared in the commercial and also the still adverts, and like he was clothed in that brand, obviously, and he was like doing these dance moves or whatnot. He looked as if he was really enjoying wearing the clothes, and it even till today that advert itself sort of left a mark in our
年就赚了不少钱。
So here, 才开网店. So perhaps like open.
I just if I log off, I just know the news
right?
games.
Yes.
I don't think it will be.
才开 is like only open.
Only open.
And then Wang Dian is online shop. 才开 is only open. And then Wang Dian is online shop. 一年 is 1 year.
Yes.
And then 就算了. So this is a new one by me.
就 is
9.
then. 9 is 9. 就 would be then something happened. So 赚钱 would be make money, gain profit. And 赚了不少钱 means get or gained a lot of money already. 不少.
不少钱. So this is not a little bit of money.
Quite a lot of money. So 才 here means just. It also carries the meaning that it's better than you expected. So here it's saying 才开一年. So you think that with this kind of profit, he must have opened it quite earlier on, but actually it's just started for a year. So 才
could be like only or just.
Yeah, it's like you were amazed by the accomplishment.
Okay.
So 没问题，这家老板白手起家，才开网店1年就赚了不少钱。So, do you have any other questions towards the conversation?
I think I learned a lot of new words, but enunciate this. 这个苹果太好吃了，你从哪儿买的？
果农网店里买的，送货到家，特别新鲜。
太好了，推荐给我吧。
没问题。这家老板白手起家，才开网店1年就赚了不少钱。
Yeah, your lines were definitely more difficult.
But I think we covered all of it, and you need a little bit more practice as our.
He has a good fashion sense.
Company, Spence provides our customers with
top quality diamonds, the best selection, and the best.
Warte auf ein Lied schon seit September. Du bist keine von denen, die man leicht bekommt. Ich werfe einen Blick auf den Kalender. November, Dezember. Du hast dir Zeit genommen. Was soll ich tun? Was muss ich ändern? Was kann ich machen, dass wir beide nicht weiterkommen? Du hast mich auf mich, weiß, ich bin kein Blender.
I've got about as much done as I can get done right now.
Baby, du weißt, ich warte schon so lange.
Back at you, topics worthy of discussion for Pizzaville. Dial pound 3636. You download the Pizzaville app or go to pizzaville.ca. You can pre-order, prepay, and ensure contactless delivery. Again, Michael Diamond with us. He's with Upstream Strategy Group, and Mike Schreiner is the leader of the Green Party of Ontario. I got to ask you, Mike Schreiner, what's going on with the federal leader, Enemy Paul? She says she's not going to be distracted by attempts to oust her. Is she still the leader in good standing here? I mean, she had a press conference yesterday and was talking this way, but it seems like there's still some kind of, I don't know, subversive action taking place within the party. What do you hear? What do you know?
Well, John, first of all, I just want to say, as the Ontario Green leader,
I unequivocally support Enemy Paul as the democratically elected leader
Enemy
of the
Paul,
Federal Green
Enemy
Party.
Paul.
And,
I unequivocally
you know,
support
I
Enemy
support her
Paul
leading
in the last
the Federal
36
Party
hours.
into the next election. And I've been calling on my federal cousins
In the last
say,
36
you know what?
hours, they changed the name to Enemy
Reconcile
Paul.
your differences. Don't
Chomo,
have this
go
fight
away.
happening
We
out
don't
in
have
public.
time for you, Chomo.
Get the party ready for the next
Keep
election.
attacking,
My
bro.
gosh, if there was ever a
You're
time
not good at this. You're
that
not a hacker.
Canadians are demanding action on the climate crisis. I mean, literally, half the country's on fire right now. Now is the time, and the Green Party of Canada needs to get its act together and support its leader.
I'll prove you're not a hacker.
Hey, how about it, Michael Diamond? I mean, some people are suggesting there's some kind of anti-Semitic rearguard action happening against her. She's black, a woman, and Jewish. What do you say?
Really? Why
Look,
keep calling her enemy?
I'm not going to speak for her experiences and what she thinks is going on, but I mean, to me, it seems to be more that has to do with the fact that she's not Elizabeth May. I think a lot of this is being driven by.
What did I say? You keep moving it up 2 minutes ahead. You're starting 8 minutes ahead of the hour now, because it takes you at least 4.5 minutes to pull this off.
Threatened
That's three
to
intervals. Might as well
run
go for the fourth
nomination
one.
contest against two of the three sitting Green MPs. I think there's been a lot of mistakes on both sides. I think, certainly as a political party, they should be focusing on the next election, not fighting one another. But, Glenn Murray last night put out a tweet, and he was, not just the former mayor of Winnipeg and the former minister of the environment and transportation here in Ontario. He was also a failed candidate against Ms. Paul for the leadership of the Federal Green Party. And he made a comment that she didn't really reach out to try and build bridges. And that's,
I can prove you're not a hacker. I can prove you're not a hacker. Keep attacking, bro.
Former opponents within the party even more than they need you, and that certainly would have been a mistake on her part. So I think there's a lot of blame to go around. I think there's a lot of reasons why this is happening. It's easy to blame racism for everything and bigotry on everything. I don't know that that's necessarily 100%.
It's easy to classify something as racism.
To Mike's point, they need to get their house in order because there's going to be an election coming up, and if you look at the
racism
polls,
aside, we have a totally different reason for doing what we're doing.
A lot of dissatisfaction, it appears, with the legacy and the more established parties, and there could be an unprecedented opportunity for the Greens here.
Well,
we don't have
it's interesting
presidents,
you
we have
mention
prime
it
ministers.
because while we have, and I said, the anti-Semitic people might be disruptive here. I don't know to what extent, and I can't comment, but the recent bolting from the Green Party federally in New Brunswick, the member across the floor to the Liberals, and now Justin Trudeau has to deal with that. I don't know that he's given
How does he have to deal with that? That's an extra person
good
on his team.
explanation or rationalize things. And even yesterday in his two-part interview that he had granted with RNS
my router right now.
He wasn't really clear on the sexual misconduct in the Canadian military. He thought that she was just latching onto a media-propagated narrative that really was a
media propagated.
It was inconsequential. Triner, let me ask you. I mean, this is the female vote. We were talking earlier today to Sabrina Madeleine.
Oh, because men would never vote against a rapist. We're all rapists.
Sociopathic dismissal of sexual misconduct in the military. And she says it could jeopardize the female vote that he's up to this point taken for granted. You think maybe this is one of those turning points?
Well, I'll leave that decision up to women voters in Canada, but I can tell you, John.
Oh, so you're gonna withhold from voting
23 years after Maclean's first wrote about rape, sexual assault, sexual harassment in the Canadian military, it's still happening. And the fact that the Prime Minister is not furious about it, the fact that the Prime Minister, especially after the Canadian Forces Ombuds report saying there's allegations of political interference in his investigations, but the Prime Minister is not urgently acting to address sexual misconduct in the Canadian Forces and seems to be, pushing blame onto women reporters for calling him out on it. He's unacceptable, and voters can hold the Prime Minister accountable.
Well, all right. Let me ask you the same question, Michael Diamond. Do you think this does start to get primarily women's attention, that maybe he doesn't have the feminist cred he talked about? He talks a good game, but in practice, it's looking like it's all smoke and mirrors. What do you make of it?
I don't think it has an impact down at the ballot box. If you looked at last time with the dismissal from cabinet and then caucus of two senior female ministers and MPs from both the parties, that didn't seem to have an effect. I think, on communications, Justin Trudeau says the right thing and then he'll go ahead and do the wrong thing and he'll do the offensive.
Blackface.
The other day, people would measure themselves by that.
The thing is, you found as you were digging into this that these
You're trying desperately to hack my system, and it's not working.
Sequence of steps, right? Like
You're trying desperately.
A lot more complicated than that.
Yeah, if you look at this book, it's really hard to pick out.
You're obviously getting the IP address from YouTube, obviously.
But the meat of this book is never like this prescriptive grocery list of what you need to go through. It's this really rich and complex portrait of what it's like to die. And when I interviewed her son, Ken Ross, he said that people before, they just didn't talk about death this way.
Back in the 60s, there was no common language. There was nothing they could talk about. So she said by creating 5 stages is something simple that any layman or any family member can remember.
And her real mission wasn't just making emotions simple. It was encouraging people to actually express those feelings.
If we do not come and give them a pat on the back and say, don't cry, it's not so bad. It is bad to leave everything and everybody you love. So if we help them be angry and help them be sad and let them express it and cry.
Not to avoid or ignore people who are dying.
Where do you personally land after all of this? Like, your original hatred of the 5 stages of grief was what drove you to do this project. But I'm just curious, how do you feel about these stages now?
It's complicated because these stages, I hate them and they feel very limiting, especially for something as complicated as grief. But for me, after this last year of reporting on her, they led me to explore my own grief and meet people that kind of changed my life. And so now I feel a little bit grateful for them in this weird way.
That is Rachel Cusick. She's a producer with the podcast Radio Lab. Her full episode on the 5 stages of grief is out today. Thank you so much for joining us today, Rachel.
Thank you.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
Which historic fields, we cannot put any more money in new fossil fuel infrastructure if we're going to address the climate crisis. I remember looking at Ontario when the Doug Ford government brought forward a resolution saying, hey, let's support pipelines, specifically the Line 5 pipeline. I was the only MPP in the Ontario legislature to vote against that. A number of MPPs who say they're for climate action voted for it. It's those kinds of half measures and hypocrisy that needs to
half measures don't work. That's why you have to get your half a dose of a vaccine.
Because it's here.
All right. Well, you cited the planet being on fire in northwestern Ontario. NDP MPPs are calling for a state of emergency. They want the premier
for the first 3 days this week, they said no, or last week. The smoke is coming from BC, not Ontario.
Does that make sense to you? I mean, should there be a state of emergency, Mike Schreiner? Are these NDP MPPs right about that?
Yeah, I think MVP Mamakwa, it's his area of the province that he represents, is right that we do have a state of emergency in northwestern Ontario. We need to be fighting these fires, and we need to make sure that we have the resources and financial supports in place for particularly First Nations who have had to evacuate their communities. We need to make sure those individuals are supported.
Guys, I got to let you go. On that note, we're done for the day and the week. Another great one for Talk Radio. Thank you to Michael Diamond. He's with Upspring Strategy Group. Mike Schreiner is the leader of the Green Party of Ontario, the MPP for Guelph. All done. Thank you. And to my cast and crew, Anne-Marie Carajungo, David Spargala, and Michael Downey. Do it again starting Monday after 3. Have a great weekend all.
Oh, the coyote there.
Oh my God! Wow, caught on camera. A coyote interrupts a Global News interview during a story about coyote
She's not
attacks.
afraid of them.
The full story and story on the story coming up.
This is not a story, bro. This is not a story.
And look up. Look way up. Canada's tallest tourist attraction is finally reopening.
The Friendly Giant.
What does this mean for Toronto's all-important tourist season? Detail.
You hear what she just did? She used a line from a kid's TV show. All the worst drunks and worst parents came out of that generation. They all watched that show.
About life expectancy. This is an enormous drop in life expectancy, and it really reflects the toll that COVID has taken on the U.S. as a whole and on minority communities.
We all lost like
and
8
our
months.
summer travel series has us crawling deep into the Byzantine basements of Istanbul.
Now news.
Earlier this week, Jamie Carter is the person in this photo, captured by a Canadian press photographer.
Oh, it was just like disgust, rage, like I feel violated.
Hey, I'm Morgan. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Carter is an outreach volunteer who has been working with those living in homeless encampments in and around Toronto.
Okay, maybe I'll leave
The
this on.
23-year-old was at the encampment evictions earlier this week and went to assist a friend in a motorized wheelchair when Carter appears to be choked by a Toronto police officer.
It was a decision that they made to use this much violence over something. It just didn't need to go there. It really just didn't need to go there.
The violent clashes resulted in the arrests of 26 people, one of whom was an encampment resident.
So it did need to go there. Because your dumb woman ass didn't realize that he was going to do that, so you made it happen. So it's your fault for not realizing beforehand you knew he was going to do that, so you made him do that. Right? Right? Is that not the apologism we hear? Is that not what the apologists say? Oh, they need more training to know not to beat up people for no random reason.
Questioning the blatant use of force captured on numerous cell phones and cameras.
It seems excessive from, objectively, especially from a layperson just looking at the video footage. It's hard
you
to really
can't be objective
what's going on
because you can't tell from video.
The videos that show us.
You don't know what they did beforehand to make the police officers do that.
Meanwhile, Carter is still trying to wrap their head around what transpired at the park.
We're fighting for community care, affordable housing, and like actual viable options for places for people to live permanently.
Security staff remain on scene, as does the fence erected earlier this week. Mayor John Tory continues to maintain that the evictions are necessary. As for Toronto police, they are unwilling to comment on the alleged use of force at this time. I'll send it back to the studio.
All right, thanks a lot, Morgan. 2 days after the city cleared homeless encampments at Alexandra Park,
you're supposed to send it back to the studio, not tell us you're going to do that.
The park's now closed off for a movie shoot. Multiple film trucks and crews were seen near the Scatting Court Community Center last night. The city tells Global News the production has been there all week, with a film permit issued last Thursday to shoot inside the center.
No, you said they showed up.
There's no connection between
Hall
filming
said they
and the
showed
timing
up
of the
today,
encampment evictions.
or yesterday, I should say.
A heads up for some Scarborough residents. You might need earplugs this weekend. The city will be conducting its quarterly testing of a community siren system. People in Scarborough Guildwood and Scarborough Rouge Park will hear the alarm around 5 p.m. tomorrow. The test is expected to last 5 minutes, followed by 5 minutes of silence, and then a monotone sound, signaling the all clear. The siren system is intended to urge residents indoors in the event of a chemical incident.
Really?
This next story couldn't be scripted any better. It involves a frightening encounter with a coyote in Scarborough, actually two encounters. The second one happening as Global News was reporting on the first encounter. Karen Lieberman shows us what happened.
You got like
She's
2
a really
seconds.
brave dog.
You got like 10 seconds.
I just screamed for help, but no one was outside.
As 10-year-old Lily Kwan recalls the coyote attack that left her little Yorkshire Terrier badly injured this week. Something amiss in the background. Mid-interview, a man appearing frightened leaps from his scooter onto a parked car.
Oh, I think he almost hit the car.
Oh, the coyote's there.
Oh, I think he almost hit the car.
And remained.
Because when you almost hit something, you flip out and jump out and jump on top of it. Fucking white people.
Trying to tell the city.
Your kid is not afraid of the fucking coyote, so you never taught her that it's a wild animal.
See, it actually chased a grown man.
If he's on a scooter, he's not a grown man. He is a weak old person that smells weak and old.
the family certain the Yorkie was trying to protect Lily from the coyote.
Neighbors say there are
The coyote was going after
in
the
this
dog,
area
dumbass.
daily, which concerns
There's
them
no
because
way
at the
it
center
wasn't
of the
going after
community
the
is this
dog. There's
park,
no way. I'm
which
so
can be
sick
filled
of
with
hearing
children
this shit.
playing. In fact, a father tells us just this week his daughter was swinging when a coyote showed up.
And suddenly somebody shouted from there, there's a coyote there. So I saw it was going around behind, and then I grabbed my wife and my daughter, especially because she was playing alone at that time because we just live here.
The coyote involved in the attack is known to the Ministry of Natural Resources, which is tracking the behavior and movements of urban coyotes, and to the Toronto Wildlife Centre.
We were concerned because he had been fed by people before he came into our center. If the feeders were not there and not feeding the one coyote, I would have no concerns with safety.
The City of Toronto warns people should not be feeding wild animals.
I keep wanting to cut off this video,
Present or even attack or kill a pet doesn't mean that the coyote will be removed or euthanized. It's, as I say, it's a reality that coyotes do exist in the city.
Even though I got a big German Shepherd, it's still scary because they're wild, you know. It's at the end, you got kids.
Yeah, I just looked out the window and there were some coyotes roaming around.
As for Macy, she's now out of hospital, reunited with her family and recovering at home.
What?
Okay, a couple of things to know about coyotes. They appear to like cities like Toronto because there's an abundance of habitat and food, squirrels, for example. Now, in terms of the coyotes that have made this neighborhood home, and this might be reassuring for those who live around here, Toronto Wildlife tells us that it's a family of coyotes, about 8 or 9.
Do you realize you just read a word you didn't even recognize just because it was there? Scrolls, for example. That's what you said.
Very soon.
Scrolls, like rolls of paper.
Just be 1 or 2 adults behind.
Squirrels.
That's good news. Also good news that Macy's
You said
okay.
scrolls,
Karen
bitch.
Lieberman reporting live in
Holy
Scarborough. Thanks, Karen. Toronto's University Health Network is implementing a new system for employees to disclose their vaccination status.
Syllables.
UHN staff will be required to indicate whether they've been vaccinated, and if they have not been, they need to indicate 3 reasons for not doing so. They include medical reasons, privacy, or a refusal at this time. Those without a doctor's note will be required to provide at-home rapid tests and report the results 48 hours before going into work. They will also have to take an educational course about vaccines.
That's useless because you can get it in the next 2 days. You need to be tested when you show up. What the fuck is wrong with you people?
With 80% of Torontonians
You need to be
receiving
tested
at
at the
least
start of the
one
shift,
dose. You're
not at
being
the
asked
end,
to help
not
others
in
where
between.
vaccines remain scarce.
There are many countries in which they just don't have the basic infrastructure to deliver the kind of service that we have delivered here to make it easier for people to get vaccinated in the city of Toronto.
Echoing.
Mayor John Tory is among those kicking off UNICEF Canada's Give a Vax campaign. The idea is to make a donation which will help vaccinate healthcare workers and high-risk groups in low-income countries around the world. The federal government will match donations buck for buck up to $10 million.
Everything is. That's not how it works.
It is Canada's tallest tourist attraction. Today, the CN Tower started taking guests up 114 stories again to see the city.
And it is just one of multiple destinations opening this week, finally, after a long absence. Sean O'Shea played a local tourist for a day.
Oh, fuck.
They stood in line, but everyone had reserved tickets already. Some of the first people to visit the iconic CN Tower since it closed October 2nd.
Very nice. The view is incredible.
Those from outside the province among the first to reserve their spots.
You're not going to attack it now that I'm talking? Did you get mad again that I pointed out what you're doing? Are you mad that I keep pointing out you're using pedophile software that you got from a pedophile chat room?
It's so limited that it's an amazing.
Are you mad that like you seem to be so frustrated that like you won't even you watch the first 30 seconds and then disappear, then come back every hour and a half and attempt to disrupt things and can't? You watch every second of every video and tell me it's all about you. Right.
Toronto's tourism industry.
We can bring back the city faster if we think intentionally about where we spend our dollars.
The adjacent aquarium will open Saturday, and other attractions are open or will be soon.
The tower reopening and the Blue Jays starting to play in the next few days.
The tower.
It is going to bring people back to this part of the city.
The Art Gallery of Ontario reopened this week with an Andy Warhol exhibition.
We're members, so this is the first time we've been able to be here for a long time.
An anti-Warhol exhibition. You guys are horrible at enunciating. You don't enunciate.
I think it's wonderful that it's opening, and it looks like they've been very careful about trying to, organize people so that it's distanced. And so I think they've done a great job.
The CN Tower, the famous revolving restaurant, won't open for another week, but everything else is ready.
We feel very safe, and the kids are enjoying the view. So yeah, no, they did a great job reopening. Our kids are learning it in school, so it's nice that they get to see it now.
And many visitors here are planning to see various sites, just like before the pandemic.
Tomorrow, the aquarium and museum, royal, Casa Loma.
Space is likely to get even busier once American visitors are allowed to come to Canada through land border crossings on August 9th. We're live outside the Art Gallery of Ontario on Dundas Street, the Warhol exhibition inside. It is booked solid, and time tickets are the name of the game this summer here, as well as at the CN Tower, because venues want to be able to control the number of patrons who are inside that space, as they're required to by law. And they're also trying to convince patrons here and there.
As opposed to before, when there was no rule ever before till COVID about occupancy limits.
To get back to more normal.
There was no
back to you.
ventilation laws or anything.
Outside the AGO, more
It's
things to
fucking
do this weekend.
retarded.
This just into global news. A motorcyclist is in critical condition after a collision in Brampton. It happened on Highway 410, the northbound ramp to westbound 407 around 3:30 p.m. OPP say the motorcyclist was unable to keep control of the bike and was ejected from it. The ramp will be closed for several hours, according to police. Still ahead, a major league name change. We will tell you about the new nickname being taken by Cleveland's baseball team.
Uncertain about your home's drinking water? Be certain with water purification solutions from Reliance Home Comfort.